Welcome everyone to the Retro Horror Academy. I'm your host, Daniel Richardson, and I am joined by my new co-host, Tyler Phelps. Tyler.
Hello.
Welcome to the Retro Horror Academy.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Alrighty, so, we're here. It's a new decade. It's a new era. And not really just a new era for the Retro Horror Academy, but for horror in general as well. So it just feels really fitting that you're joining us now because we're about to see a change in the trajectory of horror. So you guys know how we do this. Every year we pick our top 10 horror films, and then, we have our Horror Hall of Fame, class of that year that we're inducting. And so we're doing the same thing here. We're going to slightly change up the format just a bit because, in addition to Tyler, we had a big increases in the Retro Horror Academy in general. Yep. The halls are filled right now. Tons of people in this group.
Get into the 60s and on, it's going to be hell.
Exactly. And so we definitely needed the extra help here to do this. So here we are. And so tonight we got 10 horror films that we have ranked, that we have clashed, we have debated, and we have ranked them into our top 10. We also have some honorable mentions as well, because again, with this many people kind of talking about them, we couldn't get everything into it. So to appease everybody, we have an honorable mentions list as well. We got a Horror Hall of Fame, which is seeing a big improvement as well, because now we got more people to kind of weigh in on it. It's going to be a little bit more selective getting in, which I think is honestly a good thing. Nothing against the people we've had inducted in the past. They all deserve their spot in the pantheon of horror. However, we were kind of letting everyone in. And so now that we got more people, we got to tighten it up a little bit. Yep. So, but I think before we get started, we should start talking about maybe what the changes in horror are going to be. Because up until this point, for the most part, horror is horror. In the early days, it kind of had a Scooby-Doo vibe to it where, the ghost was never really a ghost. It was always somebody with a mask or, someone, behind the curtains. When the 30s came around, even before then, but for the most part, mainstream-wise, when the 30s came around, then you start getting more universal monsters. So then there was a supernatural element. You had, your Draculas, your mummies, werewolves. However, there was still kind of this kid-friendly quality to them. You could put these on matinees for children to watch. When the 40s came around, we started, introducing more adult themes to them, more psychological, your Val Lewton films, for, example, Cat People, I Walk Through the Zombie, films like that. But yet, everything is still kind of concealed in the shadows. So moving up to now we're at the 60s, we're going to see a big change in what they're going to allow on the screen. And there's no other way to really say it. Sex and violence.
Sex and violence. And a lot of these have that.
We're kicking the decade off.
Yeah,
we're not even
rating already on there. They're like telling you, hey, be aware.
Exactly. And like I said, Hammer was kind of teasing it before, in the 50s, in the late 50s, I should say, with, Horror of Dracula, Curse of Frankenstein. They were pushing some of the boundaries when it came to gore, and especially with eroticism. Yeah. However, now, and even with these films, they definitely start pushing it, but we're going to start seeing an increase now. We're going to start seeing more stuff. And so, anyways,
It'll be nice to see who in the 60s decides to push the limit.
Well, that's the thing, yeah, because, Hitchcock...
Yeah.
Clearly, he went for it. And, of course, now Roger Corman, he's going to go for it. But, that's the funny thing, because they're both on opposite ends of the spectrum. Hitchcock is high art. Mm-hmm. He's the more mainstream. Corman's the down and dirty, low budget king of the bees, and yet they're both kind of going for the same goal of pushing that envelope. So
they both had their different ways of being able to push the envelope and
exactly
keep the audience going. Alfred Hitchcock was a brilliant mind.
So brilliant. Definitely a future Hall of Famer for sure.
Definitely.
So,
there's no way you could not.
Oh, yeah, no. And, of course, speaking of Hall of Fame, let's go ahead and talk about our inducting class of 1960. We got 2. That's right. We've been averaging out 5 to 7 people inducted per year, and we got her knocked down to just 2 people. And so, this year's inductees to the Horror Hall of Fame. First, we got June Lockhart. Now, you may know her as far as horror-related stuff goes, stuff that we didn't cover because they're TV shows, but she did a couple episodes of Matinee Theater, Shirley Temple's storybook, and then she did Lights Out. But on this show, the movie she hit that really kind of cemented her legacy is She-Wolf of London, where she plays the young girl who believes that she's been inflicted with this, werewolf, I can never say this word right, lycanthropy. I can't. I'm not going to try it. Werewolves. Yeah. She's a werewolf. I cannot say that word to save my life. Gun to my head, $1 million on the table. Any scenario, I can't say that word. It's funny because she would actually go on beyond this. We're putting her in the Horror Hall of Fame. She's not considered a horror actress at all. In fact, she's more that motherly figure because she had her run on TV series.
That's what I found out when I was looking up. I was like,
Lost in Space, and she was on Lassie. And I feel like there's another biggie, and I apologize. I'm not from the era, so I don't remember the shows that much. But I know she did like another big show. I want to say Leave the Beaver, but I could be wrong. Maybe it wasn't Leave the Beaver. I know Lost in Space for sure and Lassie, but
I can't remember if I've seen Leave the
Beaver.
Or
My Three Sons. Or was that this guy got single? I don't know. Either way, though, June Lockhart, she was known more as like America's mother, Yeah. But like I said, I thought she did really good here. Again, you're coming in right now at 1960. So are you familiar with June Lockhart?
I wasn't before this, no. But she was definitely, when it comes to like the TV screen, like the not movies.
Yeah.
She was definitely held highly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, she definitely dominated that. Like I said, and we're just hitting the highlights. I mean, if you actually, IMDb her, she had a really good long career in television. So there you have it, June Lockhart. Welcome to the Horror Hall of Fame. Now we're moving right along to Robert Shane, who he actually had more of a career in horror. So some movies that we didn't cover on this show that he was in was Spook Chasers, Indestructible Man, How to Make a Monster, War of the Satellites, and Invaders from Mars. However, on this show, the movies we covered him in was The Face of Marble, The Neanderthal Man, and The Giant Claw. For me, what really made me kind of draw this guy was he was always a solid hand at playing an authority figure, whether it be a professor, a scientist, or the general like he was in The Giant Claw. And I just feel like he's one of these guys who's a little underrated when it comes to horror. I feel like, and again, I'm not saying like he's in the same class as like a Karloff or Lugosi. No, certainly not. But I feel like when he was on screen, he definitely had a presence to him, and he delivered. I mean, you can't say like he was a bad actor in these films.
He was really a leader in a lot of the films.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's what I'm saying. You bought him as the authority figure, and so whenever he was on screen, you definitely bought him. Now I was going to ask you, before this, you familiar with Robert Shane? Yeah. So like I said, it's one of these guys that he doesn't really have a lot of name recognition. Like, at least June Lockhart, you know her from her TV series or whatnot. But as far as Robert Shane, not so much. So, but there you guys have it, Robert Shane.
His officer ability was really.
Oh yeah.
It was really strong, especially for the 1960s. Because you look for that sometimes in a movie. You look for that standout guy or gal that's going to be in there.
So. Oh, absolutely. So we're going to move right along now to what we're here for, the horror movies. Our top 10 horror films from 1960. But as we mentioned, before we get to those, there are some honorable mentions that did not quite get, in there. So, we're going to go ahead and jump onto those honorable mentions. The first one on the list, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, is The Ghost Cat of Otama Pond. The basic plot here is it's a guy and girl, they're dating, and they're up in the mountains, and they end up going to kind of in this forest area, they're in the remains of this old house or whatever. But something's not quite letting them go. And there's some kind of sinister work, at play here. Tyler, I'll go ahead and let you kind of take over on this one. What are your thoughts on The Ghost Cat of Otama Pond?
Yeah, it was. I don't know. It had. I guess a certain way of if you kind of like that kind of movie. I guess. I didn't really get a whole lot into it. A couple of parts I seen. It was interesting, it's like, what's keeping them there?
Yeah.
I can't remember what exactly they let it off to be.
Well, so...
it was... go ahead.
Oh, no. Yeah. So, when I watched The Ghost Cat of Otama Pond, and for listeners of the Retro Horror Academy, I'm noticing that all these old Japanese movies from this era, they're all the same. They have the same one of two stories. Is either A, it's some kind of ancestors fucked over somebody and now today we're having to deal with it. Or, it's some kind of evil empire who kills the son of somebody. Either way, you're going to have a vengeful woman come back. In addition to a black cat. And I didn't realize, I guess I should have, but it's funny that whenever I was, when I watched this movie, I wanted to go do a little bit of research on it. I knew, I knew it was an honorable mention, but I was like, I still want to know a little bit more about this film. And apparently there was a subgenre in Japan of horror films that's called like black cat films, where for whatever reason, and again, I'm not really up on my Japanese mythology or, folklore, not like that, what the urban legends are. But apparently, the black cat is something that, in a lot of supernatural stories, it carries, a vengeful spirit with it, or it's a guide for the vengeful spirit or something like that. So watching this, I felt like there wasn't a lot different from this with the other movies. Now, I still liked it. I thought this was really good, but it was the same as Black Cat Mansion or Black Cat Saga or anything else. Just put the combination of Black Cat and Ghost together. The Ghost of Yusata was another one that we covered on this show. They're all just very similar. Now, I think what this one had going for it was it definitely looked a lot better. The ghosts looked grimmer. They looked more. It looked kind of scary.
Like they had a higher budget.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. The production values was much better on this one. I feel like the use of color, because a lot of those were black and white. The use of color really worked on this one. I guess the atmosphere, what I'm trying to say, came in a lot better on this one, I felt. Storyline-wise, it was pretty much the same as those previous films. Again, she's a descendant of, and I'm getting my story. I'm not getting my stories mixed up on this one. If I believe in this one, it was the stories, she was the descendant of someone who was killed because it was like a Romeo and Juliet type thing, and she wasn't allowed to date this guy or whatever, and then because the evil empire or whatever, the other samurais or whatnot decide against it. They end up killing this poor family. So then the poor family ends up fighting back against them or whatever. And yeah, like I said,
how do you fight samurais?
With a sword.
But they're better than.
Well, that's what I know. It seems like it's almost like the samurai was a class, but not all samurais were like that good.
Yeah.
Like it was almost like it's the corruption of the system. So sometimes people would become samurais and they were just down their luck or not really worthy of being a samurai, so they'd have to turn to like petty crime and corruption to or whatever, and that's what a lot of these ghost stories will eventually come from. So Ghost of Yusada, or sorry, the Ghost. I kept wanting to say Ghost of Yusada, that's the last movie. Ghost Cat of Atama Pond. I'm giving it a thumbs up. I liked it. Again, it didn't really add much to the mythos that we've already seen. And the bad thing is during this time, I should stop watching horror films recreational, I guess. I watched a movie called The Black Cat that came out in 1964, which we may end up covering on here again, or covering in the future. And it was really good, but it was pretty much the same kind of story, except this time instead of it being a boyfriend, girlfriend, lovers, in the mountains, it's a pair of sisters who are sexually assaulted by soldiers. And they're getting a revenge kind of thing. And of course, there's a black cat involved because why wouldn't there be? But yeah, like I said, all these movies do kind of blend together at this point.
So you think the 6.5 rating on IMDb is?
Yeah, that's fair. I'd give it a good solid 6 probably. So yeah, 6.5. I would argue that. What about you, William? What do you think? What was your?
I would probably get it in the range of 6.
So we're on the same page on that one.
Yeah, we're on the same page with that one.
So that takes us now to The Housemaid. Another honorable mention here. We got 3 total. So in The Housemaid, basically you got this married couple whose marriage becomes kind of in trouble, in danger, when the housemaid kind of starts fucking shit up. So I'll take the lead on this one. This one, it's a South Korean film. I believe this is the first. In fact, it is the first South Korean film we've covered on this show. I gotta tell you right now, and not necessarily from this era, obviously. This is the first movie I've seen from this era. I'm big on South Korean cinema in general. Parasite, Host. I know these are all the same director, but I love these movies. And so anyways, there's just something kind of more raw about these movies. Like, they don't mind hitting taboo subjects and just really, we're talking about pushing the envelope in the 60s. I don't feel like they felt like they were pushing the envelope in this movie. I think they just did it. And then to us, we're like, holy shit. Because in this movie, we get dead children, the endangerment of children just in general. And then, like, just this fucked up love story. Or not even a love story. It's like a single white female. Not even that, because that's when it's just basically like Lolita. She's just like, I don't know, that's a great thing either. Either way, this woman comes in, this housemaid, and she wants to be, she wants to inject herself as the head of the household pretty much. She wants the husband for herself. But because, I guess, the culture, instead of him just like, fuck you and hitting her and then like, we're not doing this and whatever, it's like, no, it's like, it gets really messed up. We got an abortion in this movie too.
An abortion.
She ends up throwing herself down, not like an official abortion, like it was a homemade job.
Down the stairs.
Yeah, the wife convinced herself. We're kind of jumping all over the place, but no. So this movie, like I said, the fact that it's crossing these boundaries, I loved. What I didn't like about it was the ending, because when it gets to the end, it turns out that none of it happened, and they kind of break the fourth wall. And the main character looks at the camera and is just like, so if you out there are thinking about, stepping out on your family or whatever, here's a cautionary tale. And I'm just like, oh, why did you do that? And now it cheapens it. Don't get me wrong, I still like this movie. It surprised me. I wasn't expecting much out of this. Even though it was on the horror list and, it had a high rating and whatnot.
If they went away from that damn ending.
Yeah, the ending definitely sours it. I mean,
it would, and they put something in the ending that would have made sense to the storyline.
I just would have just kept that ending off completely. Either just end it with the housemaid on top and she just ruined this family, or the family has to fight together, kill the housemaid, but they're still fractured because you still cheated on me. Our son is dead because of this. No one can fully trust you anymore. You still could have ended it on this weird, and I feel like that was probably the reason they did it. But I looked into it, and it turned out like the government or whoever's in charge, of the films of South Korea, they didn't get in the director's ear. Like, the director himself imposed his own ending. Again, I don't know if this is the case or not, but a lot of theories are because he wanted to send the crowd home happy, because he felt like he would have just ended it as is. Everybody would be like, well, that's a downer of a movie, which it would have been, but it would have made the story better, I think. It would make
more sense if they would have actually finished it.
But he wanted to send everybody home happy, so he was like, all right, that didn't happen.
Please, the crowd.
And so, anyways, I give it a good solid thumbs up as well. This was a surprise. This is definitely one I can see myself revisiting later down the road. And that's saying something, because honestly, a lot of these older movies, even the ones I like, I don't revisit them very often because it's like, it was good, but I don't need to see it again. This movie was actually, this, like I said, the fact that, I guess I should get a little more linear. We're jumping around. So basically what it is this piano teacher and his wife, who she's a seamstress, they got the perfect marriage, they got the perfect family. They got one older daughter, they have a younger son, and then the older daughter, she is crippled, I believe. She has some kind of she's on crutches or a crutch.
She has
what is it? They mention it. I can't.
Yeah, it's the bone disease, right?
She has some kind of bone disease, but either way, they're making things work, and it is a happy family, and they just moved into quote unquote their dream house, and so they're building onto it. And at this point, since the wife is getting older, and she's got, her hands are tensing up on everything. She's wanting to take some time off, and so he decided, I'll hire a housemaid to help out. And so the housemaid comes in, and she's already, she has this kind of attraction to her piano teacher.
Kind of like when she walks into a room, she just kind of takes the air straight to her. You immediately notice.
Yeah, she's not a wallflower. No, you're definitely gonna, she's definitely the center of attention. And so whenever she kind of moves in, she slowly starts kind of coming on to the piano teacher, who, we're not gonna cut him any slack. He cheats on his wife. He ends up banging her, and there's other stuff going on too. I'm gonna skip the subplots, but basically when he sleeps with her, she's doing those, fatal attraction. That's the goddamn movie I was trying to think of earlier. Not single white female, fatal attraction. So she does I'm not going to be ignored, and so she ends up, at one point, the wife is almost like, maybe I should try to poison her, but she beats her to the punch, and she ends up poisoning the son. killing the son. Now, at this point, or maybe before this, actually. Yeah, before the son dies, the housemaid is like, I'm pregnant and it's your husband's kid. But the wife, showing she's no angel either, convinces her to throw herself down the stairs, causing the abortion. And she does. And I'm just sitting here the whole time going, this is 1960. Like, this is heavy. Like, goddamn. Anyway, so she's miserable. She ends up killing their son with poison. The wife tries to retaliate to poison her, but she ends up swapping the poison out. And then, this, like I said, this is where the cultural thing comes in, because then the housemaid's just like, you know, I'll tell all the neighbors, I'll ruin your reputation unless you do what I say. And the wife just agrees to it. And then the husband's like, no, I'm trapped. And it's just like,
I'm not a hostage situation.
And I'm not condoning, you know, domestic violence, obviously. But this is an extreme case. I'm sorry. When they kill your son, you can probably hit her. It's okay to hit her. So anyway, but that's the whole thing. Like, it turns the whole family's life upside down. So I said how much I liked everything. What about you, Tyler? What was your thoughts on the housemaid?
IMDb gave it a 7.2. I felt like it could be higher.
Oh, so you think IMDb kind of undersold it?
I think it did, because maybe they just didn't have the right audience to rate it.
Yeah.
Because it takes a certain kind of people to want to watch that. That's, you know, it's on its own level.
Well, I think, honestly, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I am, guys, correct me. I think this movie actually didn't really get fully introduced completely to America. Like, I think it maybe had like an initial run early on, but again, it was a different audience back then.
It had like a preview of, or not a preview, what do they call
screening?
it? A special screening they had on select locations.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't do much, you know, didn't travel far here in America. I'm guessing, like you said, maybe
Los Angeles.
Yeah, LA, maybe New York, that may be it. But, and then it was just kind of back to South Korea for many years, and it wasn't until many years later that I guess it was kind of rediscovered again.
I can't remember, 10 plus redos of this movie.
Oh yeah, the story and stuff. And that's the thing. Same with the Ghost Cat of Otana Pond. It's like they have one story, and then they just fucking run that around. So they'll just kind of remake it.
As many times as they well, and then some of them, you know, probably thought, well, we can throw a little bit of change in there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I will say that as much as I was busting Otana's balls earlier, it's like, no, I mean, each of those versions there is differences, obviously. I'm just saying, watching a bunch of them in a row, I couldn't tell you what they are right now.
Yeah.
I had the same problem with off topic for a split second. I know, try to stay on track here. When I watched a lot of the James Bond movies, I watched a lot of them in a row, out of order. And then now, if you were to ask me, hey, you know, what's this one about? I couldn't tell you.
I love James Bond.
I like the movies, but honestly, I couldn't. Except for ones that like literally stand out, like, you know. But anyways,
Pierce Brosnan.
So back to the housemaid. Go ahead.
Shit, I'm trying to remember. So it has a really good storyline. I like the storyline, but, you know, like we say, you know, the ending was...
It tainted it a bit.
It tainted it. Well, and I think that's probably what got to a lot, but it also wants to let you know that, hey, this is just a story.
Yeah.
You know, that they try to convince them to believe the story the entire time you're watching the movie, and you get to the end and it's like, hey, it's just a story. Everybody calm down. Don't, you know, go flipping crazy over it. But like I said, I think it could have been a lot higher rating.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I agree.
Not into the 8s, but the high 7s would have been, I think, more for it. Now, I'm not sure of the other 10-plus movies that they made about it, but...
Yeah. But this
usually the first one that's ever, you know, made,
more often than not, it's
always the best one. So, but
you're saying big thumbs up, and you're saying
I like it. Yeah, I would actually, I would probably add it to my list of watching again, definitely.
So now we're going to move to our final honorable mention of the evening, and we're talking about the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. Basically, Dr. Jekyll, he's got this theory, and he's doing these experiments to try to draw out the dark side of man. Unfortunately, when you do that, it's usually a murderer, and he ends up running wild. I'll go ahead and let you take the lead on this one. What'd you think of the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll?
Well, first, have you ever read the book?
No, I never did.
So when I was in, I sometime in the 90s, it was where you can actually get books that are good. I read the book a little bit. And what I remember of it was you got one, he was half not crazy, half crazy.
Yeah.
And it was always, he would always come out at the most opportune times to be insane. So, but I like it. So they give it a really low rating on IMDb. It's a 6.3. I think it gives a little bit more credit. I know that the second one came out, I do believe, the next year.
Oh, okay.
They had the second one that was...
Now, this is actually considered, if I'm not mistaken, it may still be, but at this point, this was the most remade movie.
Yes.
Because in early years of cinema, they didn't have much original ideas. It was always just taken from books. Well, they only had a handful of books, and one of them would happen to be, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So, like, even on this show, I think we've covered this story, or this movie, 5-6 times already.
Yeah.
In fact, one year they had 2 releases, and we covered. So
So they weren't afraid to bring it twice.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Within a 6 month.
Oh, absolutely.
Of each other.
It's a classic story. I mean, it is a good story.
It is.
I mean,
I like the how it kind of kept you on your toes a little bit, because you never knew when he was going to
change.
Just flip the fucking switch and go.
I think so. For me, this is a damn good version of it. It really surprised me. I'll still hang on. I think the 1931 Frederick March version is probably my favorite, just because for a 30s movie, and granted they're not showing a lot, but he just showed a sadistic side to himself that I was not expecting for the 30s, and it just caught me off guard. And I really love that version. But in this one, A, it's Hammer. I love Hammer movies, but B, it has that Hammer quality to it. It's very, Hammer, they'll take these old horror tales, but they show it in an elegant, grand way. And, from the set design to the costumes, everything looked great in this thing. So it has that going for it as well. I love the kind of twist they put on this. And this is something that they've done I've been noticing. Because, again, I didn't know my Hammer horror as much as, I do now doing this show. And one thing I really love about Hammer remaking these old classics is they always find little things to tweak. It's still the same story. The bare bones is always the same. But, like, what I love about this version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is typically Dr. Jekyll is a good-looking guy who's just, he's very suave and nice and in public, and, he's got a lot of charisma. But then when he does a transformation, Jekyll's all bent up and he's ugly and he's just brutish and he has no manners and he just kills. Here it's the opposite, where when he's Dr. Jekyll, now he's not like mean or anything, but it's like he's just kind of a hermit scientist locked up in his laboratory. But then when he becomes Mr. Hyde, who's usually a monster, brutish, whatever, he's suave, he's handsome, he's from the outside, he's what you would want.
Yeah.
But then dude's fucking crazy.
Crazy.
And when the thing is, like, he's going for it. Like, everything he does, it's almost like he's trying to push his own limits. Like, well, how much more, debauchers can we get? How much more crazy?
He was really good at keeping that crazy.
Yeah, no, did a great job of it. Christopher Lee's in this movie. He plays his. He becomes friends with him. I forget the character's name already because, honestly, when it's Christopher Lee, I just call him Christopher Lee. But he was the buddy who basically was a degenerate gambler, constantly weaseling himself out of these things. And it's weird because at the time, Christopher Lee was a bigger star, and you almost wonder, like, well, why wasn't he Dr. Jekyll? And don't get me wrong, I forget the actor who played Dr. Jekyll, but I thought he did a fantastic job. But it was just kind of like, huh. But I think this is the time, and we'll get into this a little bit later in another movie. I think this is around the time where Christopher Lee was afraid of getting typecast in the horror films because he was Dracula. So he was probably just like, I'll be the side character.
Yeah.
I'm good, And so I feel like that's probably what happened here. No, I agree with you. Actually, you said it was like a 6 something on IMDb?
6.3.
6.3. Yeah, that's criminally low. I give it a good solid 7, maybe even like a 7.5. I thought it was
definitely
really good.
Like I said, though, it's like sometimes you get the people that don't get it.
Yeah. Well, I think I always forget too. These are much older movies. Yes. So 2 things. One, the people at the time were just a different crowd of people. Yeah. So a lot of these movies, and we'll get into that a little bit later too, were some of them were just shocking for people.
Yeah.
But then you got the crowd today who look at this and be like, well, that's just old. I don't want to watch it because it's old. And so I just feel like a lot of these movies do kind of get lost in the sands of time because either they weren't appreciated in their own time
Okay.
And they're not appreciated now because people just aren't willing to go back and
Like,
check
I'm not
these
going
out.
to go watch something that's
Exactly.
that old.
For me, I think the big plus on this thing too was, again, because we watched so many horror movies, and I mean that's all my free time. It's either if I'm not doing other projects and podcasts or whatever, and not working and not raising a goddamn kid. The only free time I have, I spend just watching movies. And I've been watching a lot of these old movies from the '60s and whatnot. And I'll tell you right now, it's refreshing when you get a movie like this because, again, I've seen Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at least 7 times already. And each version, while yes, they're different, they're the same. It is the same, pretty much the same movie. So when you get something like this that just slightly tips it a little bit, it's refreshing. So yes, so there you guys have it.
And the Housemaid and the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, they were damn near close to being in the top 10.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. Yeah, no, we should mention that these honorable mentions. It was just
it was
one thing.
not. It was not
yeah.
an easy separation of the top 10 within 3 because. I mean, The Housemaid could easily have been,
Could
an
swap
easy
down.
6 or 7.
Well, there's definitely one movie on here I probably would have took out, but
yes,
we'll get to it. We'll get to it. All right, so guys,
We may have screwed up.
we are now moving on. We'll go to our official top 10 horror films of 1960. So, kicking things off, we have Village of the Damned. Basically, what it is you got in the small little village of Midwich. You got all these kids who are all platinum blonde with glowing eyes. We're not exactly sure who the paternal figure is. We know the mothers, obviously, because they gave birth to him. We don't know who the father is, but things are getting kind of out of hand in this town. I'll kind of go ahead, kick off things with my notes here. Throw some facts out there before we get to our actual reviews. This was based on the novel The Midwich Cuckoos. This thing would go on to have a sequel and a remake. MGM actually required the rights to this movie before the book was even out. Like, they were already in tune to this, and they're like, we want to do that right there.
Yep.
Kind of funny, we've mentioned about in the past, UK has a crazy censorship with their movies, especially then, if you ever get a chance to look into like video nasties of the 80s, some movies, sure, but then there's a lot of movies just like, you banned that? Like, why?
Yeah.
And so, here's the thing, they released 2 prints of this movie. One print, the normal print we watched, and then there's one where they take the glowing eyes out. Because the UK censor said too much.
Then why would you even?
It doesn't make sense either. It's just like, what the hell? So they took the glowing eyes out.
The glowing eyes make the movie.
Well, it's what everybody remembers. It's the look of the kid. It's the blonde hair. It's the glowing eyes. Difference in the book and the movie. In the book, there were 60 children that were aliens or whatever. Here, we only got 13 of them. Yeah. You got any other notes you want to throw?
Well, I am DB gave it a 7.3, which I am comfortable with that score. Mm-hmm. I like it. U.S. release was November 14th, and then the UK release was, and then the U.S. release come shortly after in December.
Okay.
It did have a budget of $320,000. $320,000 in 1960 would be a lot of money in 20.
Probably. Keep going.
2025.
I'll check that out. I'm curious.
The box office numbers ended up being 2.1 million. Some of the box office numbers I've seen was a little higher, but they never could actually confirm it. So the only one I could find was the 2.1, which is what is that? That's a lot more than.
Actually, it'd be a little cheap.
320,000
would be roughly 3.5 million.
3.4.
Which, it sounds like a lot, but when you're making a movie, not so much.
Yeah.
So still build a low budget. But go ahead.
But the budget in the 60s, though,
everybody,
like when we go through this list, you can tell some of the budgets are 5 or 6 times higher than the movie before. But like I said, it did have the sequel and the remake done. The remake was in 95. I was trying to remember if I had remember seeing that.
Directed by John Carpenter.
John Carpenter.
Yeah. Had Christopher Reeves. I could be wrong. It may be the last movie Christopher Reeves did before the accident. And then it had Kirstie Alley, I believe, Cheers fame. But,
okay. Yeah. It was It had, the director was Wolf. I can never pronounce his last name.
Rilla?
Ryla?
Probably Ryla.
Ryla. But then again, the Village of the Damned, for what its budget was,
Oh, yeah.
I think that they did a hell of a
Oh,
job.
it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
It looks fantastic. Yeah, we're not debating that at all. So, I guess my thoughts on this movie. I like it. It definitely kind of kickstarted the whole creepy children craze that we see, the bad seed, and so on and so forth. I feel like, though, it does kind of follow the formula of the time, especially when it comes to like sci-fi, alien, whatever. But the kids are creepy, the story's good, and it would have been interesting to see this, I guess, first, because I saw the remake first, actually. I think watching this for the first time, not knowing what the hell's going on, would be very interesting, because you're like, well, it would be like, what the hell, the town's basically excommunicated and just blocked off from the world for just, I forget how many hours, but, people are trying to fly into it, they're losing control, people are apparently killing over, but then you realize, no, they're just out, or whatever. And so I feel like, if it's the first time watching, you had no idea what this was leading to, it'd be crazy. But, of course, today we already know what the secret is and the children and all that stuff. It's definitely dark for its time. I mean, the children make the guy end up like shooting himself with a shotgun and shit like that. So it's just like, goddamn,
And then, running yourself into a wall.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, like I said, it definitely has. I do love the scene. Because, this always kind of reminds me of Body Snatchers in a certain sense. I know they're not quite the same thing because the children clearly aren't, replicating people. But the fact that you can kind of read your mind and you got to watch what you're doing around these people. The final scene when, the professor, the doctor, or whatever you want to call him, the teacher, when he's trying to keep, he has a bomb with him.
Yeah.
And he's trying to keep that secret. And so he builds the wall in his head. And the kids are trying to fucking chip at that wall. And for whatever reason, that does kind of get me. Because I'm like, I don't think I'm smart enough to build a wall in my head. Like, I feel like those kids would already be like, they'd be a door in the wall. And they'd be like, oh, here's the door. Oh, that bomb, there's a bomb over there. Makes this guy shoot himself.
The thing is, when they said, you're thinking of a wall.
Yeah,
it's like, and then he was trying to get him to not even, he's like, no,
exactly.
we need to start,
look over here, guys. Over here.
Look at the board.
And yeah, so, so there's a lot. It was really good. I'll be honest with you. I'll go a little under the IMDb rating. I'd give it a solid 6.5 probably. But still good. Like I said, I still liked it. I liked it better than the remake. I wasn't that big on the remake. The remake had almost and it was theatrical, but it had a made-for-TV look to it, which I was like, come on, John, you're better than that. Like, this.
I'm going to put that on the John Carpenter list of watch.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it. It's worth checking out. And you said you may like it better. I have not seen the sequel, so, I'm sure we'll probably come across it. I don't know what year it came out, but
1960.
Okay, gotcha.
Children of the Damned.
So there you go. So we'll probably end up coming across that. I do hear, I guess, in the sequel, the kids are more sympathetic. They're almost like they're the heroes of the movie instead of the villains. So I don't know how I'm gonna react to that as much, but so anyway, I'm giving this a good solid thumbs up. Again, there's a reason it's 10 and not higher on my list, but there you go. What says you? What do you think?
To me, I'm a big fan of The Happening, and that's kind of
me too.
It kind of had a feel to it because the kids were just basically, they make you do whatever they want.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. So I liked it. But the kind of the part where the soldiers were just like falling over and nothing was happening to them, I was kind of like wishing something would fucking happen.
Yeah.
It's like the car come through there, run him over, something. But then they would actually get back up and they wouldn't remember anything that happened. Which the kids were just like the 13 kids are walking through the town, all into a group, and they're just like staring. They were even telling each kid like, no, don't do this now because you're going to mess up and show everybody what we can do. But it was a very mind controlling movie. I do like it. It did have that that special. They could have went a lot of ways with it. When the fire burned, the glowing eyes was your last scene that you seen.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, they didn't. Nothing happened to them. Of course, they're not, one to actually show you, kids burning in
Oh,
a
absolutely.
building, but
So I get my interpretation. I think they're dead. Like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know.
Well,
do I really want to see a?
you don't want to ever see nothing like that. But
I'm gonna say speak for yourself. I'm twisted. You show me on kids on screen getting slaughtered, I'll take it. I don't care. It don't bother me. Even speaking as a father, that's funny because a lot of people say that and then they have kids and they're like, "Well, I can't think of it now." I was like, "No, I still can. It's not my kid. I don't care." So
you're not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's not going
Not
to happen. It would be a freaky thing, though. Could you imagine walking through that town and you just see that group?
Well, not just that, but I mean, imagine if you were in that town, just living through that experience of you blacked out for like 9 hours, had no recollection, and then you got all these kids being born at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like, how? I mean, I guess they're just
They
British.
an
They're
airplane
polite.
down.
But yeah, it's like at that point, it's like, man, forget being polite. That happens. Turn against them. Like, I don't care how that sounds. Like, eradicate.
They had to bring
instantly.
in the military to try to contain.
And again, I guess because we know it's a movie. We know
Yeah.
that these are kids. These kids are evil. But it's like, even in real life, I'm like, I'm sorry. I know a lot of liberals will be like, no, save the children. Like, no, these kids need to be eradicated. Like this, flamethrower in the crib. That sounds horrible, but guess what? We gotta save the village. And they still end up blowing up the
Did you
buildings.
notice though that they pretty much all had blonde hair
Yeah.
and had the suits on?
Mhm.
I guess
I mean, yeah,
not
they did.
suits. but-
Well, I mean, I guess that was more like their school uniform, probably
School
more than anything.
uniform,
But
so-
you're right. Yeah, they all had the platinum blonde hair and the glowing eyes.
that was like you seen them, you're like, yeah, these guys are bad.
It's like you said, it was a 7.3 on IMDb.
Yep.
I got 2.1 million instead of 2.1, but still the same thing. 2.2, 2.1, same thing. And it had a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes. So critics
That's
loved it.
why I feel like the IMDb score should be just a little higher. And I
Well, you got to remember, Rotten Tomatoes, at least the tomato score, that's more critics, and then the IMDb is more regular folks like us. So I kind of see where not a lot of people maybe have seen it yet.
A lot of the crowd really is like,
Yeah.
oh man, we're not.
And then the older crowd who was around for a time, they're not really computer savvy, so it's just like All right, so that was the Village of the Damned. So now we're moving on to number 9, a little film called The Little Shop of Horrors, where we're in the rough part of town, and it's a little flower shop that's really kind of a shitty one, and you get this guy who's kind of a bumbling fool of a guy who discovers a new plant and finds out that by feeding this plant blood, it can sustain it. But that will eventually lead to him having to murder, possibly, to feed this plant. So, a little shop of horror. I'll let you go ahead and get started with your notes. And
So IMDb, sorry, they give it a 6.2 rating. I think that I feel that's good. That's a good score for it. It did come out in 1960. The box office, all they had was 25,000 admissions. So who knows how much they were charging? Not a whole lot. I couldn't even find a ending gross on it. So
I'll get to it at the end. I did find, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, I might have to do a little calculations, because sometimes I think we're probably using the same source, probably Wikipedia or
Wikipedia.
So a lot of times, if it's a foreign box office and they give it it made this many francs at the box office, like, oh fuck, I got to convert. And then when it does this admissions, I have to try to look, see what was the average ticket price. So I mean, my number could be off. And again, it's hard sometimes, because if you go to Box Office Mojo, they will literally have its entire run. Well, these movies get re-released over time, and I'm like, well, shit, I didn't want to know what made all together today. I want to know what made its opening year. So it's kind of hard to find sometimes. But so I'll go through some little notes and tidbits I have here. As you mentioned, directed by Roger Corman. It's written by Charles B. Griffith, who was a regular writer, with Roger Corman there. So this thing was it developed a cult following, kind of a lot of factors. One was just word of mouth. People were watching Drive-In. Hey, you gotta check this out. Speaking of Drive-In, actually, it was double billed with Black Sunday, which I thought was kind of interesting. And so a lot of people was really wanting to watch Black Sunday, because usually in a double billing, you put your strong movie first, and then fuck it. People will probably leave after that. We'll put the second movie on next. But people were staying after watching,
they didn't plan on people.
and so people were just like, yeah, there it is. Of course, around this time, we start getting rebroadcast on TV. And so this is a movie that would get put on TV, so that a lot of people were watching it at homes now. So that's another thing that, would boost a lot of these movies, would be a TV audience. Maybe an audience that didn't normally go out to the theater are now watching on TV. And then, of course, the last factor a lot of people will quite point to is Jack Nicholson's wacky-ass performance. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But yeah, so a lot of different factors kind of went into making this movie a cult classic that it would, go on to become. This thing would actually spawn a stage musical, which would in turn spawn a movie remake. But again, it's kind of a remake of this movie, but it's more based on the stage musical than anything else. The movie was actually it's funny because Roger Corman, who I hold my heart in a very dear place, because this guy is the epitome of just low budget filmmaker doing the best with what little bit of money he has. So when he shot his last movie, which we covered on here, Bucket of Blood, they was like, okay, well, Seth's going to be it for a couple more days. We'll tear him down a couple more days. Like, whoa, 2 days? Well, I can get a movie done in 2 days. And so he decided to make this movie
in the flower shop
just to make it, we can get an extra, some use out of these sets. And I'm like, that's insane. And so everything they can get shot in the flower shop, they did. And then everything else outside they would film that. So it wasn't all shot in 2 days, but they used the 2 days to their advantage and got this taken care of. So, so it's going to be demolished. They went ahead and, he got his movie taken care of then. So I was like, you know what? Pretty fucking sweet. There's a story out there that they would pay winos 10 cents to be extras in the movie. And then went even further to hire a couple of those winos to be production assistants to wrangle the winos, because the winos were hard to wrangle. And I'm like, again, dude, I just love
winos. Do you get the winos?
I just love low budget filmmaking. I really do. It's just great. This actually also would spawn a cartoon in the 80s, which I honestly don't remember, but it was just called Little Shop. Do you remember a cartoon called Little Shop? Yeah, I don't either. Apparently, though, Roger Corman was executive producer of it, so, But I guess it's more kid-friendly, obviously. And then, of course, the plant was more of a character, but he was like a good guy character, because
he wasn't trying to...
wasn't trying to eat people.
Wasn't trying to eat people.
Wasn't trying to eat winos or anything. A little funny story about this, too, because Jack Nicholson obviously would grow on to become Jack Nicholson, one of the biggest actors of all time. So when this movie would get released later on VHS and then DVD, instead of putting the plant on the front cover, obviously, they just put Jack Nicholson, and they're like, and guess whose name was on the marquee? Jack Nicholson. Even though he's literally in this movie for one scene. And I'll be honest with you, the first time I watched this movie was because I bought it in the $5 bin, and they had Jack Nicholson on. I was like, oh, a Jack Nicholson movie for $5? I'm in. The writer, Charles B. Griffith, he actually did multiple roles in this movie. He was the patient at the dentist who was in pain, who gets out. He also played the robber who tried to rob the flower shop. And then he's the voice of Aubrey Jr. So it's like, or Audrey Jr., sorry. So there you have it. That was... so what did you think about this movie just in general?
It was definitely the first time I'd ever seen it. And then, seeing a 1960 Jack Nicholson was... Well, I mean,
no Novocaine.
He didn't have anything, and it was like, man, it's like that is like so cool how young, because he was, I can't remember what it said, 20.
Oh yeah, he was. I read too, but I don't remember. Yeah, but he was. I think at this point he only had one other role before this, so
he did.
That's unprofessional. Go ahead, sorry.
But IMDb gave it a 6.2.
Mm.
I would say that'd be about the area that it is. I would give a thumbs up on that one. I do like the movie. Like I said, I had never seen it before, but the plant voice was cringy as you could ever be. Like,
I mean, this is a campy,
screaming, "Feed me!" It's like that's all. I think that's all I ever heard it say was "Feed me." And and then you had the guy who was like cutting his fingers, like give a little blood.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, now you want blood? It's like, no, he's a killer plant. And the dentist office where he is drilling that guy's tooth. Oh my, that right there gave me cold chills.
Oh yeah.
Couldn't do it. I couldn't even play that scene. But for what it was, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was being the first time I had actually ever seen it before. I could have probably done a few things to make it a little higher rating, but like I said, they did the dentist office and the flower shop, and
take into account, literally he threw it together just because he had sets. I mean, this wasn't like something they planned out for a year and built. It was like, no, they literally threw this shit together.
For something that was put together so quickly, it works.
Absolutely.
I do like the killer plant. You know, it kind of grows on you a little bit. Like, wouldn't mind having one of those around the house one time. You know, just to.
Would you name it Audrey Jr.?
Well, my girlfriend's name's Audrey.
Well, there you go. So.
Don't kill me.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I do like this movie, but not as much as I think other people do. Because I mean, you talk to other people, they love this movie. This is considered a classic. I don't put it up on that level. I don't think the horror comedy aspect works for me as much. Although I love, because this is basically almost, at least the beat wise, a lot like Bucket of Blood, which I love. But excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm drinking carbonated sodas over here now. I can't handle my sodas. Bucket of Blood, I think, worked beautifully in this regard, where it's just this goofy and the same basic thing, you know, kind of a dim-witted, you know, guy who, for whatever reason, has to commit murder, even though he don't really want to. He does it to kind of, you know, for whatever reason. It follows the same mold, but honestly, I don't know. I give this like a 5. I could watch it again. I don't know if I'd want to watch it again, but like if it was on Joe Bob's Last Drive-In or something like that, I'd watch it again, no problem. But I don't know. It kind of shoots in the middle for me. Like I said, I don't really think the comedy works as much. I don't think the horror definitely isn't there. And I remember, you know, I never saw the. Did you ever see the remake, the 1989 musical remake of this?
No.
So, wasn't a big fan of it either. I bought it for my son, actually, because I'm a psychopath of a father, and I'm trying to get him into horror at an early age. But I want to get him, like, kid-friendly horror. So I was like, this is the perfect kind of movie. And so I bought him the musical, because I was like, you know, it's a giant plant eating people, and it's got music in it. Again, never seen it myself. It has Rick Moranis as the main character. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Steve Martin plays the psychotic dentist. And Bill Murray is the Jack Nicholson role of getting his tooth and doesn't want to have Novocaine. So it's got a cast, and I think John Candy has a scene in it too. I mean, it's got a decent cast. And I like the music, but honestly, I heard the music in other places. In fact, Family Guy did an episode where, was it his tooth? Chris had something. I can't remember what it was now. What do I think is his tooth? I don't remember. But anyways, they did a whole episode where Chris Griffin... Oh, it was his pimple. He had a pimple, and you know, feed me, yeah. And so, but that whole thing was just ripped off of, but they used more of the '89 version. So when I heard the music, I was like, okay, I remember this from Family Guy. I remember this from somewhere else. So some of the music's okay, but honestly, the movie itself, it falls into this category of just like, it's not funny enough to be a comedy, but not scary enough to be a horror movie. So it just kind of falls in that weird middle of like, it's okay.
Yeah, I didn't really find the comedy aspect of it to be very high, but you know, it had its moments, but it had very few of those. Yeah, moments, not enough. You know,
like I said, the Jack Nicholson scene, I really liked.
He has the same look.
Oh yeah, that guy doesn't age at all, man. Like, so like you said, 6.2 on IMDb, had a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then this could be a crude number, but I got 9,000 at the box office for its initial run. Now, granted, again, we're not counting re-releases or whatever. So there you go. The Little Shop of Horrors at number 9.
Yeah, we only had 25,000 admissions on that one.
Not going on.
So you know, it actually grew.
Oh yeah, it did over time. It definitely.
It's one of those movies that took the time to.
And like I said, 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's insane. Like that's actually pretty that was higher than our last movie. So yeah,
pretty damn high.
Alrighty, so we're moving on now to Blood and Roses. It's a story about how, basically, you know, this guy is getting married, but his female cousin is a bit jealous, possibly. And she kind of wraps herself in the lore of, apparently they had an ancestor who's rumored, you know, even though they're going by fact, but, you know, rumored to be a vampire, who also would end up killing her cousin's fiance, or maybe even wife, because she was jealous that, you know, her cousin, which again, I guess it's easy for us to make fun of it here, but marrying your cousin in that era wasn't as taboo as I guess it is today. But the whole time I'm watching, I'm just like, dude, your cousin, just let it go, don't worry about it. But she was just like, no. So anyways, this is actually based on the Novarella of Carmilla, if I'm pronouncing that right. Carmilla. It's the female vampire story. So I couldn't find a lot on this, but the only thing I did find that I thought was fucking hilarious was apparently this was screened for President John F. Kennedy, to which he walked out 40 minutes into it and just told his press secretary, just give me the reviews after it's out. And he left and never watched it. And I was like, bro, I feel it. Go ahead. What notes do you got on this?
So it had, on the box office, it had 1.2 million admissions. So
there's a bomb that went off.
Whatever.
The studio's being attacked right now. It's the people who actually like these movies that we're shitting on, they're attacking us.
They can already see us doing it.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So a lot of it was, like in words that obviously I could never pronounce. To understand, but it did have another release date in Rome.
Okay.
In 1961, that actually had a little less reviews on it that were good. Letterboxd, do you know what that is?
Yes.
Okay, so Letterboxd actually killed this movie. IMDb.
Oh no. So 5 is the highest you can get on Letterboxd.
Oh, Letterboxd is a 5.
So that's about 5. Yeah.
Okay, so 3. It gave it a 3.3 out of 5. So I guess it's not too
more in the middle there.
It's more in the middle. Pretty interesting movie. With it being hard to understand, I guess, but yeah, I don't know if I could go back to.
I'm gonna tell you right now, did not like this movie.
Yeah,
I did not like it at
all.
Probably
will not go back to watching this.
It was just boring. It was just, and the whole time, I don't know. And I'll flip flop. I'll be the first to admit there are sometimes I'm like, I like ambiguousness in my stories. I don't have to have everything spelled out for me. So if it's not clear what's going on, I'm okay with that sometimes.
Yeah.
There are other times I'm like, just get to the fucking point. I don't want this to be some kind of ambiguous head game. And so the fact that it's never clear if she is a real vampire or if it's in her head.
I think it was all in her head.
See, that's what I'm taking it as. That's how when I watched it. I think she was just mentally ill and just wanted to fuck her cousin. We call those people, citizens of Arkansas is what we call them here. But anyways, as far as this movie, Blood and Roses, I don't know. I don't have much to say about it, honestly. I was bored through this whole thing, and that's the thing. It takes a little bit to bore me. I've become accustomed to these old movies, so at one point maybe I could have been like, oh man, another black and white nothing movie followed by another. But now it's like I've seen so many of them, and I can find things in them to enjoy. I was hoping for some titties in this. I really was. I was like, well, maybe we'll get lucky and we'll just see some bare breast. Why not? We didn't even get that. She got covered in blood, I think. Nah, that don't do it for me. I'm sorry, I can't do blood.
Was that the end? That was the ending that had the chest.
Yeah. She had on her. Yeah, she had.
She had the big slice where the blood stuck out really.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, very technicolor. But yeah, so for me, it's a miss for me. So what did you?
I didn't. Yeah, I wasn't really feeling it too much. The ending was probably the thing that stood out the most to me. Yeah. But other than that, I probably definitely won't go back to it.
Yeah,
I don't know if the 6, because IMDb gives a 6.5.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'd go that high.
No, I'd go.
That's pretty high.
In fact, I'd go Letterboxd with it, but on the IMDb scale because it was just like, yeah.
But like I said, it's for a certain.
Yeah, I mean,
certain characters of people.
I get it because it's an artsy movie. It's for an artsier crowd. It's definitely not for a horror crowd. It's definitely for people who prefer dramas and Jane Austen novels and shit like that. I'm sure they would love this. I'm sure. I never read the novel, but I'm sure it's the same thing. Now I know this would get remade later on a handful of times. I think Hammer does a version that is more erotic.
Yeah,
it's probably more the soft core. I'll probably enjoy that because I'll be like, well, the story sucks, but anyways,
they had 1.2 million admissions.
So
to see this.
So at the end, I always gotta do the rating stuff at the end. So like you said, 6.5 IMDb. Didn't have a Rotten Tomato score, but I did. I must have seen this. So when I did my calculations, again, this could be janky as hell. If I'm wrong, if anybody out there knows the numbers, let us know. We're dying to know. We can admit when we're wrong. We don't mind. I came up with 0.4 million actually total. So. Again, who knows if that's the real number or not, but yeah, so 400K, I guess that's not bad. It's better than Little Shop of Horrors, even though Little Shop of Horrors is going to have the better overall,
I would love to know what the budget was. there was nothing on the budget, like they didn't have an actual.
Well, I mean, but it didn't look bad. It had, like I said, it had that Hammer quality to it, where it did look fancy. I guess the word used, but just I don't know. I was honestly, I look like Jack Nicholson whenever, like in The Shining, when she walks up to him and he just had his nightmare and he's just sitting there and he's just looking at the pages and then she's like, "You did this!" He just like kind of looks up like kind of shocked. That was me during this whole movie. I'm just like every now and then I'm just like, "I love my cousin." I'm just like,
what?
What's going on?
Left field.
Yeah. So anyways, I guess we'll move on from Blood and Roses to number 7. This is, of course, the Brides of Dracula. This is a Hammer film. It was directed by Terence Fisher, and it stars Peter Cushing. This was actually a sequel to Horror of Dracula. Of course, it does not actually feature Dracula. Yeah. And as I mentioned before, it's basically because Christopher Lee just didn't want to be typecast as Dracula. However, he would return in the sequel, Part 3, Dracula, Prince of Darkness. So...
the title would have probably told you that Dracula's not in it, but being the guy that I am, I was waiting to see Dracula.
Nope, same here. I was like, I guess we'll focus on the brides, and this other new guy, but same here. I was just like, why is Christopher Lee not in this?
Yeah, I don't.
What's going on? And then that other guy shuts up. I'm like, oh, they didn't recast Dracula, did they? And they didn't, but it's like, the castle, apparently, they used it twice before in The Curse of Frankenstein and Horror Dracula, but it also get reused a little bit later on in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I'm a huge fan of. Yeah. What kind of notes you got on this?
So it got a 6.6 rating, which, I think that's pretty fair.
Oh, absolutely.
You could bitch about maybe going a little higher, but I like the 6.6 rating. It did have, the UK release. It also had a Japan release.
Okay, yeah.
The budget on it was £120,000, and the box office ended up being around $330,000. So they actually are not really good with converting pounds to American dollars, but maybe
if it was close to just being on to $1, that they definitely increased it.
Yeah, they definitely increased it. They could have. Of course, then again, it's 1960. You have to have the people that want to go see.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point, though,
a Dracula film.
Hammer was doing pretty good at this point. They weren't hurting. So my thoughts on this film, I liked it, but you definitely needed Dracula. You needed not just Dracula, you need Christopher Lee. I felt like what was his name? Like Meister. I guess I should have mentioned what the plot was. Basically, Van Helsing, played by Peter Cushing, goes back to Transylvania and he's got to track down this other vampire who is Meister. However, this Meister's already got his sights set on the school teacher and he's going to go in on her. And so I feel like that was the biggest downfall. I love the brides, and in fact, I'm blanked on their names. I should have wrote it down. I took all these notes and didn't write that down. But the women that played the different females, I love them. Like I thought when I watched the new movie Van Helsing, you can tell they got inspiration for those Brides of Dracula from this movie, Brides of Dracula. You can just tell, just the look, the dress, also. But Meister, I don't know. I couldn't get into this guy. He felt like the Temu version of Dracula, and it was just like, I don't know.
So if they went a different way other than Meister, then it would definitely give it.
Honestly, if it would have been like if you were to come to me and be like, "Hey, Daniel, Horror Dracula did awesome box office.
Yeah,
we're going to do a sequel, but Christopher Lee's not coming back. He does not want to come back. Here, make it happen. We want you to call it Brides of Dracula." I would have focused more on the brides trying to get revenge on Van Helsing. You could have done the same story. Because, at this point, we're crossing boundaries. So it wouldn't have been outside the norm to have female vampires have this, fixation on the school teacher. So you can still have that whole romantic subplot. Yeah. Whether she's, reciprocating or not, that can be up to, whatever. It don't matter. Because, again, if she does, it's going against the taboos and norms of the day. If she's against it, then it's like, okay, well, clearly it's non-consensual. She doesn't want it, but the female vampire was going to try to give it to her anyways. You can still have that either way, but then basically, because he struck up this friendship with her, he feels the need to protect her from these vampires. So you could have still done this without the, second-rate vampire. But again, it's Hammer. It's good. It's a solid story. I just don't like it in my Dracula series. We'll wait and see what, because again, I've only seen, and I don't know what number it is, because I believe there's like 7 Dracula movies total. I saw Satanic Rites of Dracula. That's it. And that was just because it was public domain and it was a box set with like other low budget horror films. And I remember thinking it was okay. Like it wasn't a huge thumbs up. Because everybody kept saying like, Christopher Lee is like the best Dracula, Even if you love Bela Lugosi, and I'll agree with that, I think Bela Lugosi to me is who I think of when I think of the look of Dracula. But as far as like the actual Dracula, I go Christopher Lee. Like, dude, he's just fucking scary and imposing. And I didn't see that in Satanic Rites of Dracula. But in the horror Dracula, I was like, yeah, this is my Dracula. This is my guy. And so I was wanting to see more of him here. And like you said, when I didn't get him, I was like, And so anyways, we'll wait and see what the next Dracula song will be like. But yeah, as far as this movie, I mean, I'll throw it down the middle. It's kind of down there with a little Shop of Horrors for me, where I'm not completely shitting on it. It's just not a go-to for me. Yeah. So what do you think about the movie?
It's one of those movies that, if like you said, if you have it on in the background, it's on in the background.
It's on in the background.
I didn't really get into it. They gave it the 6.6 rating.
Mm.
I mean, I probably would go a little lower.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't. I guess, like I said, it depends on if it's your type of movie.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't actually feature the person that you want it to feature. But
it's in the title.
It's in the title. That's all you're going to get. The Dracula's in the title. Yeah, I probably would put that on the back burner of.
Okay. No, that's fair.
I'm not. I'm not trying to shit on it because I don't. Totally. Have seen it like you're supposed.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just.
No, I mean that's fair. Like I said, I agree with you on that one. Like I said,
you say Dracula.
There's not much. Yeah, there's not much really outside of that. It was cool seeing Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. It was good seeing him kind of. I guess in a way he's racking his numbers up at least. At least as far as his cred goes, he's like, yeah, I'm destroying other vampires now.
Certain people that are like Peter, that make a name. Make it even. There you go. That's why.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. He is the draw of this movie to me. So. So as you mentioned, 6.6. It has 79% on Rotten Tomatoes, so we're not the only ones that weren't fully on board with this movie. And then you got Box Office 3 right there. I always kind of round up to whatever, but I got 0.5 million, so pretty close. So probably somewhere in the middle there.
The budget was 120,000 pounds. So
I mean, yeah, it didn't do bad for itself. So we're gonna move right along now to our number 6 film from 1960. This is The Fall of the House of Usher. Where basically it's a guy whose fiance has gone missing and she went back to her old house. And so he goes to follow her there. However, it turns out that, she's been kind of taken with an illness. I'm using quotations that you guys can't clearly see. I don't know why I did that. Quotations. Quotations for the people at home who can't see. But she's been kind of, taken ill. And her brother is very possessive of her. And to the point where towards the end you realize, oh my God, he may have buried her alive in this house. So I'll let you go ahead and start things off on this one. What notes do you got?
So IMDb gives it a 6.9 out of 10. I don't know if you have. Do you have the Rotten Tomato?
I do. 84%.
84%. So it kind of falls into equaling each other out. Yeah. The budget on it was $300,000, and the box office was $1.4 million.
I got 1.5, but yeah, that's. I always round up, so that's probably what mine was.
They had over 200,000 admissions in France. It did drop in Canada and the U.S., so having a little
international flavor.
Flavor. Which a lot of these are, you notice that they're coming from almost the same area.
Oh, yeah.
It's not very wide open.
That's I mean, I notice a lot of these too. I mean, you have your UK, Italy and France seem to be the big hot spots. I'm not saying that Spain didn't get whatever, but I'm just saying for the most part in Europe, and then over here it's Canada, America. I rarely see much about Mexico. Now when they release their movies, I get information, but it seems very few and far between when it's like the other way around. Like, oh, this movie's a huge hit down in Mexico or whatever. Yeah. Japan is kind of always a hit or miss, So sometimes you get the numbers over there. Now it's a lot different now. Like today, we're a bit more. It's a smaller world today, so everything's kind of everywhere. But back then, it seemed like it was just little pockets or whatever.
Sometimes they'll, how they do when they have them go overseas. Mm-hmm. It's not even the right film.
Yeah.
All the way through.
Oh yeah, because a lot of times they'll edit how they see fit. They'll cut certain things out.
So that makes
or like we were talking earlier with the Japanese movies, sometimes things are just kind of lost culturally. Yeah. We're just like, why are they doing that? Or why are they acting like this? And so yeah, I can see that.
You have a different culture of people taking control of what you're going to be able to see and not see of it. So, well, it can be helpful sometimes. Some movies, if they learn to take some things out, it'd be all right.
Blood and Roses, take a big chunk of that. It should have been like a 10-minute short, and I've been like,
I think that was an hour and 22 minutes.
It felt so much longer if that's the case, because my God, that thing was brutal.
That may have been the one that was an hour 59. Yeah. I can't remember, but yeah, it was.
What? Yeah,
it definitely could have been a lot shorter.
Cut the shit out of that one.
About 40 minutes long.
So, I'll throw you some tidbits and notes out here. So this thing, much like this has got an all-star, by the way, crew behind it. So, we mentioned earlier, Little Shop of Horrors director Roger Corman. He's back. He directed this. This is a screenplay written by Richard Matheson, who would go on to become a heavyweight in the world of horror. Stars Vincent Price, current Hall of Famer here on the show, and based on the short story by Edgar Allan Poe, another Hall of Famer here on the show. So, yeah, this is a very good company here. This is the first of 8 collaborations that would kind of be a pairing of Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe, Vincent Price. They would do 8 of these movies, which is crazy to me. And honestly, I haven't seen any of them. Maybe I saw The Conquering Worm, if that's one of them. I've seen that one. Or was the Witchmaster General one of them? Or Witch Hunter General? Or I don't know. We'll get to them, and I'll be like, I already saw that. But anyways, maybe I've seen a couple, but I certainly haven't seen all 8 of these things. So people will comment how when they're going to the fiance is going to the mansion, the trees are crazy. They get this like smoky look and very Tim Burton-ish, right? Yeah. That was actually it wasn't by design. It was by accident. Apparently, there was a Hollywood fire that broke out and just decimated part of the forest. And Roger Corman's like,
we're going to use it.
Camera, go out there. And he sent his crew out there to shoot it real quick before people showed up. So that, like the fog, that wasn't fog. That was literally smoke from the fire. So I fucking love Roger Corman. So
he made a big improvement since.
Oh, dude, he's the man. Like I'm not, and I do my best never to kind of bring my own quotations again, my own filmmaking career into this. But like I learned so much from Roger Corman because just like. I have no money to make a movie, but goddamn it, that didn't stop me. And I use a lot of tips and tricks from this guy because it's like, here's another one. So at the end, you get that huge fire, takes the house down, right? Yep. So what happened was he finds out that there's going to be a barn that these farmers are going to destroy. And he goes, well, wait a minute. Let me give you a little bit of money. We'll burn it down and we'll film it. And they're like, yeah, sure, just, take care of it. And so he does, right? But it doesn't stop there. Not only does he film, he puts like 2 or 3 cameras up on this thing, burns it down to the ground. He will reuse the same footage in his other movies. And it's funny because he tells in an interview, he goes, well, it was 1960. Like, I didn't think you guys were going to realize that I use the same footage in more movies. I guess you wouldn't expect us to have DVDs and, assholes on the internet going, wait a minute. That's
actually not a bad idea.
No. Troma did the same thing with a car crash, but they did it funnier because they shot, I forget what movie it was, maybe like Sergeant Kabuki Man or something like that, but it was basically a car flips, right? Yeah. Which, for people like us who have no money, that's a special effect. Like, that's budget right there, right? So, boom, car flips. Now, I'm just going to make up a car. Let's just say it's like a Buick Oldsmobile or something like that, right? The next movie would be like a red Ferrari or something. Or convertible, because Troma. Convertible. And then they would just cut to the Buick flipping again. So it's just like...
We're not going to flip a...
So they kept... So you'd be watching like... That wasn't the same, like, clearly. Like, they don't even try to hide it. It's just like, nope, we just cut to that every time we have a car crash in separate movies. Fucking brilliant. So how he got this movie made, actually, was he literally, usually they were having Corman, as we saw with his previous films, shoot 2 low-budget black and white films. Go do it. And he would do it. But he was like, we can make more money. He goes, let me, instead of shooting 2 black and white movies, let me shoot 1 color movie. Give me the whole budget together, and I can do 1 good color movie for you. And they allowed him to do it, and that's what we got. We got this right here. And one last Roger Corman cutting corners story here. When they shot the basement scene here with the stairwell, the studio just left that behind, and so he just took it. And so we will see this staircase in other Roger Corman movies from here on out, which I'm just like, I love you,
Roger
Corman.
was good at
Oh, yeah.
taking stuff.
Brilliant fucking dude. R.I.P. man. He just passed away earlier this year. Or, no, it was last year, 2024. So R.I.P. Dude was a brilliant mind up until the end. And despite what you think about his movies, and yes, they do dip in quality. You know, not every Roger Corman movie is a home run. You gotta respect though the art of making them. On a low budget, even if they're shit, you're just like, hey, this guy got it done. And not only that, he usually got it done in like 3 days. So it's just like, I don't know. Big Roger Corman
What
fan.
is it, like he was in the late 80s?
Oh, easily, probably. I don't know how he was when he died. Because the last appearance I saw him on, he did The Last Driving of Joe Bob. They did an interview with him on there. And you could tell then, like, oh, man, this guy's, he's old. He's kind of getting close to, he's still pretty cognitive. I mean, he was still, coherent and everything. But, yeah, you can just kind of tell he looked pretty rough then. I'd even venture to say maybe 90 or something like that. Okay, so what do you think of...
He had a good box office outing.
Oh, yeah, no.
From it.
Dude, in his early days, because he's known as the king of the B's, but he dipped his toes in the A's every now and then. Like, the guy, I mean, he's done the gamut. He's done big box office bonanza all the way down to straight to video garbage. Like, he's done the whole slope, So this guy, I mean...
he almost, he got a 6.9 rating on IMDb.
So the guy can make a good movie. There's
no
doubt about that, yeah.
And he was good at learning what he did before, how to improve it, but not only how to improve it, how to make it likable.
Efficient and appeal to your audience. He knew what his audience was. He knew he was appealing to a drive-in audience and not necessarily a theatrical audience, which I think is why maybe he changed it up with this one, because he I can make 2 black and white movies, make money back on them, throw them out there on the circuit, or let me try my hand at this.
Go big time with one.
And it worked for him.
It was a good...
So what'd you think about this movie?
I liked it. Like I said, it was first time I'd ever actually seen this one before, and now that I'm getting into the Roger movies, it's kind of like, this guy has a good background for what he's doing, so it's kind of like you're wanting more, and he's good at delivering that.
He definitely is.
The budget on it was only $300,000.
Oh yeah, dude, so new house stretch a budget.
His budget on what was it, the
Little Shop of Horrors?
Little Shop of Horrors, probably wasn't even remotely close.
No, hell no.
So you give a guy a little more money, he can do a lot.
Oh yeah, he'll stretch it for
but
you.
like you say, he's taking the 2 films, he puts it into one, he adds color. And
he knows how to invest and where to invest at. He knows where to pour the money into. So
he also knew from previously. He knows what attention he needs to draw from certain people.
I don't know if we'll get to it or not, because I'm not sure if it'll be as high on the list. But he did a movie called The Terror, also with Jack Nicholson and Boris Karloff. And the story behind that was he shot The Raven, and another big budget movie. Yeah. But then it was another case of Little Shop of Horrors, where they're just like, we shot quick, and we got 2 days left, and in 2 days, hammered. And don't get me wrong, it's not a great movie. I'm not going to lie, but in 2 days, he was able to basically hammer out a script, shoot it with the actors, and the set's still there, and give the studio, hey, you just asked for The Raven, but here, there's The Terror. And so now that money that wasn't even for The Terror that was left over from The Raven, they now have 2 separate movies now they can put out there independently. So everything that the Terror made was just gravy on top. Like, the money was all in The Raven. That was it. Yeah. So that movie can bomb. It can do great. It doesn't matter. It's just extra. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Like, holy shit,
We need to take a guy that doesn't really fear of losing anything from doing,
Oh, he's shameless. He don't give a fuck.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
He doesn't care at all.
You either going to like him or you're not going to like him. And
either way, he's going to make some money.
Either way, he's going to make some money. And he, over the years, through that year, he made a lot of money because 2 of those movies dropping in the 60s.
This guy would easily, and not just that, but he was also a big-time producer. So, when he wasn't directing, he was producing. He was still, and he was definitely, and he would even say that's why he got out of the directing game later on. He said it was just easier to produce, and he could make more money that way. So it's like,
Don't you wish you could take a time machine, go back, get these guys, and bring them to now so people can actually make a damn decent movie?
You would think. My God, you would think. Yeah. But the problem is now, I don't know.
They had so much less than they do now. But they made so much more out of what they did have.
Nope, you're absolutely right.
Even if it's using the same scene over again,
It worked.
They were able to do it, and it's like I don't know. You know, I don't want to throw shade at people now, but I don't think the mindset could be anything near what.
Not as much. Now, I don't know. There's still a few studios out there. I know, like Full Moon Pictures, who's like behind like Puppet Master, those kind of movies. They're definitely on the Corman, spectrum of things. Yeah. I would say probably Asylum. Their biggest movie is probably Sharknado. Those guys are probably in that same vein, but mainstream-wise, no. There's no one that's doing movies like this right now, mainstream-wise. At least not to my knowledge. If I'm wrong, if you guys can think me by, drop it out there for us. But I think for the most part now, it's too studio-controlled.
It is.
More, it's you do what we say, or we'll just do it ourselves.
We're not going to even try to advertise you if you don't, follow our line.
Like, fall in line,
it's
or
like,
you're out.
Well, if you would stop making people fall in line and just let them have the free will.
Let them do their
you know how much money you would make.
And that's the thing about Corman too. Would be like these guys didn't care what kind of movie he's making, just make us money.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of these grindhouse movies and drive-in movies kind of followed that formula of like the director, or not even director, sorry, the producer would come to you and be like, hey, Tyler, I want you to make me a movie. Yep. Here's your title. It's, three-headed monster from Mars. And I want at least 4 breasts in it. And have a scene where a guy gets to have a chainsaw. And you're like, what's the plot? He's like, I don't care. You figure that out. But here, that's exactly. And so you gave the director and the writer all this freedom, as long as they delivered on those key elements. And I'm like, I miss that aspect of filmmaking because you got some wacky. Well, I'm not saying it's always good. And don't get it twisted out there, people. I'm not saying like, oh, all these movies are just gold and they should cut. No, a lot of them were stinkers and they suck. But you can't say they weren't fun to watch or interesting or had something where you're just like, okay, that sucked, but goddamn, what did we just watch? Like, that was crazy. You don't get that. And unfortunately, when you don't get that, you just get boring dribble. So now there's nothing really,
it could be. It could always be worse.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it definitely can. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not like we're in the dark ages of cinema. It's just you got to get straight away from the mainstream. For the most part. You got to find independent outlets really.
And a lot of movies are starting to find their footing. Starting with when we get into the '60s.
Oh yeah,
starting to find the ways.
We're gonna click into it for sure. For me, with this movie, which you get the title of their House of Usher. I think that's the title. I told you that's the title they use.
But the
original was called the House of Usher. That's why I wrote it down. But anyways, I'm kind of in the middle of this one as well. High points are, I think the look of the film is fantastic. I think Vincent Price does a phenomenal job. Like I love that guy so much. I think that guy is just a hell of an actor. Definitely deserves his. I mean, I'm kind of blowing smoke up our own ass by going like, oh, our Hall of Fame is important and he's in it. But he deserves to be in any Hall of Fame. Like literally, the guy is truly just a horror icon. So yeah, in all honesty, but this movie it just drags a bit. Now I do like there's a surreal moment where the guy has a dream where he's trying to follow his sister and she's lost in a crowd of people. Like that was shot so crazy. Like he captured that dream or surreal type world. I never knew the story where the guy was barricaded in the wall. Yeah. So it's kind of cool that this is where this is the story came from or whatever. I like that. But there's a lot of just in between moments where I'm just like, okay, get to the next scene. And I don't think this was a very long movie, but there's this part that did kind of drag. However, it didn't deter me from the story, and I do want to see more of these Corman Poe Price collabs. So for me, maybe I won't go a full 6.9. I'd probably go a high 5, probably, but still, thumbs up. So,
like I said though, like we said through this whole entire thing. The audience.
Oh yeah,
that you're going to.
This is considered a classic. I mean, that's it. I'm the one who's standing against it, saying like I'm just not as big on it. No, this is considered a masterpiece by some. So I'm not debating that at all. Absolutely, this is it found its right audience, and you know what? Yes. All right, so we're in the top half of our top 10 now. We're going to go to our number 5. This is 13 Ghosts, where we got a family that moves into a haunted house that has 12 ghosts, and they're looking for 13th.
Just one more, Daniel.
Just one. Just one. That's all you need. So this thing was directed by William Castle, who we've covered his films The Tingler and House on Haunted Hill already. And it stars, I say stars, she has a smaller role, Margaret Hamilton, who was the Wicked Witch of the West in the original Wizard of Oz, which I thought was really cool casting because I don't think, to my knowledge, and I didn't really do my research, so I apologize. I don't think she was as relevant at this point, career-wise. I think she pretty much have dropped off. But to bring her back as the housekeeper, who may or may not be a witch, we don't know. Even at the end, it's kind of like, tap my nose for you guys at home. So, anyways, but I thought it was kind of really cool to put her in there. The gimmick, because William Castle is all about gimmicks. With the Tingler, he put little motors in the seats. And at certain points, because in the movie The Tingler, it was a weird creature that would somehow crawl up on your spine. And you'd feel tingle when you're scared. And so he would have people in the theaters turn that switch on in certain moments. And certain people get jolt. And that's probably his best well-known gimmick. House on Haunted Hill, a little jankier. He when the person falls in the vat of acid, or before they fall in the vat of acid, you see a skeleton crawl or walk on screen. He would have a skeleton supposed to like swing into the crowd, but it was never that. It was always like on some janky rope, and then someone's like, and the skeleton's just going through the crowd like that. But here the gimmick was at theaters. It was called Illusiono Vision. So basically, what Illusiono was is he would have it. It was two. So the movie's black and white, and that's the version that everyone's seeing today. But at the time, the ghost would be red tint. Yeah. So he would give everybody red tint glasses. So if you want to be safe, because it was so scary, you could put the glasses on. You wouldn't see ghost. They would blend in. So you just see everybody reacting to nothing. But if you can handle the terror, take those glasses off and ghost.
Was that they were actually selling those?
They would just hand them out at the theater. Yeah, no, that was,
they had the double.
Yeah.
The double lens where it had the one that had the frame and had another one. Totally different than what we would have today.
Oh, yeah. So, what notes you got for this? I'll go ahead and kick it over to you.
It comes in at a 6.0 on IMDb. And the budget for it was $440,000. The box office did $3.27 million.
Damn. See, I got slightly something different there. I got 1.5 on there, but again, who knows? But I'll go. Yours is probably a little bit more accurate, only because I felt like mine was a little too low for as big as this movie kind of was when it came out. So I'm guessing the 3.27.
I would say the 3.27 million would be fine. I mean, the budget of it though, kind of different. They were in between the 440 and 510,000.
Okay. Well, a lot of that also, because a lot of times when people will drop a budget, they never put into account marketing. Yeah. And they always tell people, like, you always got almost double your budget back to make a profit kind of thing. And I always didn't know what that meant, but then when you find out that, no, it's marketing, that's a big part of it. Well, so I would say that's probably what one of it is. Like, the real budget's probably the 44, and then the other one's probably the 51, I'd say. So
they, had a hell of a turnaround.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. No, it's... William Castle's a lot like Roger Corman. Like, the guy knew how to tap into that audience mentality of, like, what can I get? He was a carnival. He's a carny for sure. He's a carnival barker who was just like, come down and see, watch this, the gimmicks, you'll be terrified. Oh, I forget what movie it was. The other gimmick he did was he made you sign a waiver because it could be so scary. You may die of fright. And he wanted to make sure, and I think like an insurance policy was added to that like that. And again, his movies were always cheesy and campy and corny. But again, that was how he got you in. He's another guy that I really admire, just his tactics.
That was what was it? I was trying to remember the place that they actually did it at, the location.
Did what at?
Where they shot the movie.
13 Ghosts?
Yes.
I don't remember. Yeah, I'm blanking.
I'm pretty sure it was somewhere in the Northwest, like.
No. It was shot in Hollywood. Yeah.
Okay, so
maybe it was the Winchester Mansion. They shot the exterior maybe at the Winchester Mansion. Now the interior, I believe, was like another location altogether. But I think maybe the exterior shots.
So it was two different. So they did they tricked me. So
So my thoughts on 13 Ghosts. Here's the thing. This I put it above Little Shop of Horrors. This is definitely more. It falls into the more of the horror comedy aspect of things. It's definitely more lighthearted. It's more campy. It's kind of corny. I like it, but I'm not gonna lie. This is one that I have seen it a handful of times. So I mean, this may have been my third time watching it, maybe fourth. it's not bad. It has moments in it. I like the kid. The kid was somebody big. The kid would go on, maybe not big, but he would go on and do a couple more things after this. I'm blanking on what he did, but it doesn't matter. But I don't know. I saw the remake first. The 2001, I believe,
Yep,
13
2001,
Goes
13
with
Goes.
Tony Shalhoub and Matthew Lillard.
Matthew Lillard, yeah.
And I've heard people talk shit about that movie. I don't give a fuck. I love that movie. I think it's brilliant. I do think it loses its horror element toward the end, but leading up to it, dude, that is like those ghosts are terrifying.
What was the one?
concept.
The jackal.
The jackal, dude.
Oh,
he was,
man.
yeah,
No.
dude, it was awesome. So I mean, it was just one of those things where I don't know, seeing that and then going back and watching this, and even when I watched it, 'cause I mean, I was probably in my late teens, early 20s when I watched this version of it. I knew it wasn't going to be scary. It wasn't going to be anywhere on the level of that. And I went into it prepared to be like, okay, keep in mind, Daniel, this isn't, going to be the scare show. Even with that, it's just, I don't know. It's a little too goofy for me at times.
It was a lot. It seemed like it was more. I guess you couldn't really say kid friendly, but it tried to portray to
I would have no guilt showing this to my kid because it'd be like, yeah, you're fine.
The kid probably be like, that just sucks.
Yeah, I mean, because it'd be like it's like watching the Addams Family or something like that, or the Munsters. It's very light, it's fluffy. I'm not saying, I'm not talking bad about those shows. I love those shows. I'm just saying, but it is like, it feels like this is like a TV movie. So it feels like almost
With the 12 ghosts that were, it gives.
Well, yeah, even the ghosts weren't really like you didn't have a jackal.
Yeah,
you didn't have one that was just like truly terrifying. And they're like, what was like a lion? And it's like, did the lion die too?
Yeah.
And then his tame. I don't know. It's just whatever.
Where did the lion come from?
Yeah. So, anyways, but it does have that. We mentioned elements of like the haunted house stories of previous eras. In your 20s and your 30s, where the ghosts weren't real. It was always a guy kind of pulling the string, and you had that element here where it's almost a Scooby-Doo thing, where you find out that he was like the insurance guy, right, or the representative who was like, he knew there was supposed to be a treasure in the house, so he was trying to scare him, but he didn't realize there was also ghosts in this house as well. And so, anyways, it had that element to it, which did kind of brighten it up a little bit. Again, he's dressed up trying to scare the young girl, and so he's creeping through her house and whatever, her room at night. So I mean, it had elements that were decent. And again, the fact that this would go on become a cult classic, it would become so well known that they would eventually make a remake of it. I'm not taking anything away from it. It's number 5. I'm happy with that. But at the same time, the same for me personally. I kind of shoot in the middle with this one too. It's just like it's okay. It's not the end all be all. But William Castle.
But if we never got this, we may have never got the 2001 release.
Absolutely, yeah. It paved the road. It led the way.
It would be a very hard comparison, to the 60 to the 2001.
Yeah, it really is. It really is apples and oranges.
Because the 2001 goes much horror.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, same goes for House on Haunted Hill. That's one we actually did cover on the. We covered that or the sequel. I don't remember. Or did you do both?
We did the original.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we did. Yeah. So we covered it on Kings of Scream, and the same thing. You go back to the 1959 original, very different movie.
Yeah.
And again, that was definitely more played for horror though than laughs like this one. But at the same time, it's like you can't compare that to the Dark Castle remake. So, what'd you think about 13 Ghosts?
I really like. I like the 13 Ghost. Gave it a 6.0 rating, which that I would put that right around there. So
okay.
I'd give it a little check mark for what they used and had in that film. They did what they had.
Yeah,
they did what they could with what they had. So I do like it. I like the storyline of it, but I was catching myself like not paying attention completely. It has certain parts where it would stick out,
and then there's a lull.
There was a long time of like
nothing that's going on.
Son of a gun, is it going to? Are we going to do anything?
What are we doing here exactly?
I don't know if I would go as high as a 6 on the rating. But then again, it may have not been my type of film.
But for what it is, you're saying.
But for what it is, and for where the budget that they had, which they're not going to have a whole, I think we have one film that has over $1 million budget.
Yeah.
They do what they can with what they have. So,
and we mentioned, with William Castle, he's very much in the same vein of Roger Corman.
Yeah.
He knew what to do. He knew how to, kind of stretch what he had, and more often than not, it worked for him. So,
yeah, had maybe the 12 Ghosts could have been
a little bit more.
A little bit more.
But like I said.
But when they come up with the ones like the Jacqueline, like the 2001 film, it's like you.
Well, there's a lot more. I feel like in the new one there was a lot more detail spent on.
Yeah.
Because they even, if you get the DVD on the special features, there's like whole backstories for every one of them.
Yeah.
They just hint at in the movie, but so you get the idea, like they fully fleshed out all these characters, whereas in this one, not so much.
They didn't really have like the backstory that you were really wanting to.
Yeah.
Because, it's like, how did they get to this point?
Exactly.
Why?
Why are they at the house?
Why are they at the house?
At least in the 13 Ghosts, they were captured Ghostbuster style and contained in these little chambers, And here it's just like, they're just hanging out in the house.
They're like, you guys can run free anytime.
Exactly, yeah. Why are you here,
But they were there because they had that urge to want another ghost, so they stayed.
With the family. Alrighty, last thing I put on this is it had a 36% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was given the boot for sure.
They showed that one.
So yeah, critics weren't. You can tell the audience liked it more, spent more money on it, but the critics wouldn't have anything to do with it. Alrighty, so we're moving on now to our number 4 film of 1960, and we're talking about Black Sunday. Basically, the plot behind this is you got this kind of brother and sister, and she's taken out for being a witch. And however, many years later, she's going to come back to this village, and she comes across her descendant, and she's basically wanting to kind of take over her body and become like the reincarnate version of that or whatever. I'll let you go ahead and take the lead on this one. Go ahead and give me your notes.
So on IMDb, they gave it a 7.1 rating. I guess that's fair. I would say that's fair.
Yeah.
The only thing is couldn't find any budget or box office information on this. Absolutely nothing. I don't know if they, certain movies had a lot of.
I did find a little something, so
okay.
I'll hook you up with that.
That's good. Yeah, because I didn't want to get the wrong information, but yeah.
All right, so here's what I got on here. First off, Italian horror.
Italian. Yeah.
This is directed by Mario Bava and stars Barbara Steele. Love both. Big fan of both of them. Here's the funny thing: it was an okay success in Italy, but it was huge for AIP, which is a studio that released it here in America. It became their highest-grossing film at that point in America. It's going to be a trend. Now, I'll keep going through these reviews, but I'll keep going over these notes. But it's going to become a trend. So this thing got horrible reviews in Italy. Good reviews everywhere else. Yeah. I don't know what Italy had against their own horror films. Like they're embarrassed by it like that.
They're expecting so much more.
Well, and I would find out later on, France was kind of the same way, where you don't have much of a French horror scene. You'd have these splurts, but it's almost like they're embarrassed by those, and they're like, we don't put money into that. But here, watching these artsy fucking films over here, and I don't know, I kind of get the same vibe here as I'm reading these things. Of course, this is considered a pioneer of Italian horror, and it set the standard for Gothic horror. The Italian production company, and I'm going to probably butcher this, but Galati, apparently, they made films that weren't really well received in Italy, but they always were well loved here in America. Go figure. This movie would actually make horror icons out of both Mario Bava and Barbara Steele. Tim Burton has gone on to cite that this film, Black Sunday, was very influential on his own films, which I can definitely see. That Gothic look. I feel like this and probably the early German expressionist films like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and the Golem probably had a lot to do with that too. But Tim Burton's favorite horror film. He loves this movie. Richard Donner, who was the director of The Omen, said that he used the cemetery scene in The Omen was influenced, the look, from this movie, which again, you can totally see. This was officially Mario Bava's directorial debut. However, as we all know, in Lust of the Vampires, I believe he was the writer on that. And when the director just walked off the set, this dude took over. That's a story I hear a lot too. It was a common thing in Italy where you did have a director, but apparently it was almost, I hate to use this term, but almost like an orgy where everyone just kind of tagged out whenever, and people just kind of fluidly direct for you. So there may be a scene where I'm like, I'm gonna take a piss. You want to do this for me, And then you just go direct, and just, but one guy will get credit, but then it really was like a collaborative thing, which I'm always half and half on. Because part of me is just like, that's cool that they're that comfortable to be like, yeah, go ahead, direct it. But the other part of me is just like, man, like, what if that one person brings, you're watching a movie, you're like, oh, that scene sucked, and it's like, oh, it was Jimmy. Jimmy took over the camera that day. It's like, oh, fuck Jimmy.
But it had different, having different people do that.
Yeah.
Put so much thrill into something because you never know.
Half and half. I feel like
you never know what
with
you're
certain
gonna get.
directors, absolutely do not touch.
Yeah.
Your Quentin Tarantino's, your Alfred Hitchcock's, your John Carpenter's. I don't want to see a second guy show up.
No.
So
is that bad though? If the director of the movie has to rely on
I guess it was almost like common practice over there though, where it wasn't necessarily like he had to rely on it. It was just more like, yeah, I'm doing something else. Like I'm busy with something else. I don't have time. Even though I'm a goddamn director, I don't have time to direct this scene. Well, you get on, hop up. And I guess they weren't necessarily. You get this a lot because I guess being a fan of film, to me, it's like this is your art.
Yeah.
Some people are just like, no, this is a job. Like I just work in Hollywood. I just happen to be a director. That's it. I don't care about the art of it. You tell me to shoot something, I shoot something, we move on. And it's like, oh shit, okay. And so maybe it was a lot like that at the time where it's just like, guys, the studio needs 5 movies out this year. Let's get it done. Let's work together.
So you had your guys that just wanted to get the films out. Yeah. Then you had your other directors that are like, we're going deep intel.
Well, it was like, you can say about Roger Corman. Like, I would never say that Roger Corman was an artsy director. He was like, by the numbers, I need money. We're going to cut corners and make it work. And don't get me wrong, he would turn out, the occasional good movie. But at the same time, I don't feel like he was ever just like, I'm doing this scene because it represents the struggle. No, he was just like, no. Take your top off. Shoot. Go. Next scene. Go. And then, of course, the sets of this movie will actually be reused later for another Bava film, Kill Baby Kill. I do have a confession to make. I've seen a good handful of Mario Bava movies on Shudder. They always have these like little curated lists. They change every month or whatever. Yeah. And one month it was like the films of Mario Bava, and I was like, oh man, this is a guy I need to know. So I watched them, and damn good director. I love the movies. However, like James Bond and those earlier Japanese movies, I've seen so many of them, I couldn't tell you the plot. I've seen Kill Baby Kill. I remember that title. I couldn't tell what the fuck it's about. I have no idea. Black Sunday the same way. Saw Black Sunday before we did this show. I was just like, I don't remember the plot. When I started watching, I was like, okay, I remember now. But like I said, I watched so many of them in a quick succession that they all blend together to me. So it's been fun going back though, because honestly, I'm reliving these for the first time in a way. I'm like, oh.
And sometimes you find gems.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they were always so good at hiding, the good movies. Like you wouldn't go see. You would go see it, and then you would think that was a really good movie. Then you see something else, and it's like, damn, I want to go back and see the other one because but. I like how they had a lot of different ways of going about that.
Oh yeah. What'd you think about Black Sunday? What's your review?
First time I'd ever seen this one. I don't really remember a whole lot about it. I think I was one of the first movies that I actually watched.
Gotcha.
So, but it does have a good high rating on IMDb.
That it does.
Do you agree with this 7.1, or do you think it goes?
I go a little bit lower, but I'm about mid to high 6 myself.
Of course, they don't. They don't ever tell you where they're doing these. Where they're asking, you know what I mean? If they're asking,
well, IMDb, that's international. Yeah. So this is just anybody who's ever seen it. Go on there, go on there and vote for it. I will say. I always contribute every time we do any movies on this show. I always contribute a rating as well, and so I got like a 6 probably on this one. So for me,
I don't.
This is one of the first Mario Bava movies I did watch. I think honestly they may have actually had them in order chronologically, so I think I've watched them. At least the movies they were showing or displaying on that service. I think it has a great look. Again, I definitely see where Tim Burton's influence came in. But to me, it does just kind of blend into other films of the time, like I said. And maybe because I did watch so many of these Mario Bros. Movies at once. But like I said, this one, and then there was a movie that had, and I'm blanking on the title, and I apologize, everybody. Boris Karloff would do a movie with him later on. Black Sabbath. That's where the band got their name from. Same thing, where it's just like, in fact, when we were going to watch Black Sunday, I thought I was watching Black Sabbath, because I was like, okay, this is the Boris Karloff movie. And then I was like, oh, I don't see Carl's name in the title, like, or the credits. I was like, oh, okay, this ain't that movie. And now I remember the title. I was like, oh, it's Black Sabbath. So that's what I'm saying. To me, a lot of these movies just kind of blend together. I think the look of it's great. Barbara Steele, I love her. Her and like Hazel Court are my two favorite like European actresses when it comes to old horror films. I don't know, they got quality to them. Yeah, she was the witch. The girl gets put in the taken out early on. Yeah, I don't know. She has a alluring factor to her. I just really like. But again, like I said, it's one of those things where this movie has a great look, great thing. The storyline is just kind of whatever. It's just, I don't know. I feel like they probably didn't have a full-on plot or a script. It was probably changing daily. I do truly feel that. I want to say I may have even read that, and you could tell. But again, visually top-notch, acting. Again, I don't know what version you watched. I watched it with dubbed, so it was just bad voiceover, stuff like that, which was just hilarious at times. But again, great look.
Lucky for me, I can't see the
thing.
The voices matching up with the.
You're good at that point. You're like,
it's like it was fun.
Good.
What do you mean it was all messed up? No, it was fine.
This movie, like you said, 7.1 IMDb, 88% Rotten Tomatoes, and grossed $4 million on its initial run. So did very good box office. Again, not so much in Italy, I don't think, but
probably
overseas,
a budget of like between 3 and 5.
Probably, honestly. Oh, maybe even less. I'd say honestly, probably less.
Could have been less.
Again, I think they are the type that were just like, we ain't putting a lot of money. Because I think even like your big budget horror movies, they didn't want to put much into that. Even in the heyday of Universal horror films, when Frankenstein and Dracula and the Wolfman are raking in money, the sequels weren't getting anything put into them. They're just like, all right, you just made us $5 million. Here's $300,000.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like, I just made you guys this much. Can you please give me $1 million? No. Here's your $300,000. Go make your movie. And it's the model they use today. Like I said, Paranormal Activity movies. I don't know if any of them ever top like $5 million, because you don't need to. It's all found footage. It's all but they break in. Like even did you ever see the Unfriended movies where it's like all on a laptop?
Yes.
So movie, I'm gonna make up numbers here. So anybody out there like, well, technically, I don't know how much it made exactly, but I'm just throwing out ballparks. Let's say if it took like 1.5 million to make, it made like 3 point something at the box office. Here's the thing, or we'll even go higher. We'll say 5 million at the box office. You guys know, it's like, oh man, that movie tanked. Only 5 million, shit. Guess what? That didn't tank for them because they just, doubled, tripled their, initial thing, and then they make a sequel. And that's how the movie business works. The best example of this, I do remember the numbers vaguely, was Sinister. So when Sinister opened, it only made 18 million. And same topic was just like, oh man, but they wish they had a stronger opening. It's a $6 million movie. So it tripled its box office.
47 million now. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it keeps going. So it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like, you know what? That's damn good, for its thing. So no one really takes into account that. So yeah, I'm sure this movie probably, I would venture to say it was under $1 million box office.
Opening weekends were better back then?
It depends. I think with your mainstream movies that actually did maybe, because the movie business is a little bit different. We have multiplexes now and multiple drive-ins, so they would send out more prints.
Yeah.
Back then, especially these lower budget movies, you didn't have that. You would basically have maybe a handful of prints, and they would travel them town to town kind of thing. You wouldn't really have a good handle on what a movie did usually until the end of the first year or whatever. Now, like I said, they would still keep track of all these things. That's how we keep track of this, as we're doing it now. And that's why some of it's kind of hazy. Some of it that you can't find because, it's like, well, shit, we don't know. They're there. What? So, but yeah, I think, they definitely kind of had a handle of what was doing, business and what wasn't. But again, sometimes you had to wait a little bit. Yeah. Like Little Shop of Horrors. It was just like, we don't know if that's doing good yet or not. Oh shit, it's made more money than we thought.
Yeah, it had a lot of people that that liked the movie, but never went to the theater.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
or they never went to the drive-in.
Exactly.
It's like they pick it up after it comes out.
Oh yeah.
because this is
Well,
who
see,
they are.
that's the thing. Like, you know, in this era, unless it played on TV, if you didn't see it in theaters, you didn't see it. So
Yeah.
it was one of those things where a lot of times movies would kind of come and go, and you would have no idea. In fact, speaking of that, our next movie's going to really be like that because it's just one of those things where no one knew this thing even really existed except for a handful of people until many, many years later. So, speaking of which, we'll go ahead and move on to that, I guess. We're now in our top 3 horror films of 1960, and this is the winner of our prestigious Bronze Skull Award. I am, of course, talking about Peeping Tom, where you got a guy who is a psychopath who likes to video his victims to get that look of fear on their face captured on camera before he goes in for the kill. So, let me go ahead. I'll sprint through. Oh, go ahead. You can give me your notes first.
Well, on IMDb, it came out at 7.6, which
I concur. Yep, got the same number.
I would say that for the 1960 film, yeah, that probably runs together.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
You know, the budget was 133,000 pounds, and the box office was only 149,000.
And same, yeah, that's the exact same thing.
So it really was only to a certain crowd.
Well, you're about to find out why.
Because it's.
So,
go ahead, Danny. We'll let you.
this is the British
Drop
horror
the
film. This thing received a harsh critical reception when it would first open. Now, I want to tell you right now, this came out a few months before Psycho. There's definitely some similarities between this movie and Psycho.
Yeah.
Kind of a quiet, mild-mannered serial killer who has some kind of weird obsession with women and is taking them down, you know, for, and of course, different reasons, you know, but, and anyway, when this thing came out, yeah, they fucking shit on it. As time would go on, it would get a little bit better. People would be like, well, actually, you know, I watched this movie again, and I think it's a little bit better. Time would go on a little bit more, and then today it's considered a classic. But at the time, no. And that's why it tanked. In fact, this thing, get that in a second, considered the first slasher. I will always kind of disagree with that. I think, in fact, I'm still in this. This ain't come from me. I had the idea, but Joe Bob put it into legit words for me, and I'm definitely going to use his phrasing. He calls this a proto-slasher. It has all of the makings of what a slasher would eventually become, but it's not quite all together just yet. And I agree with that assumption. I wouldn't, you know, if I'm listing my favorite slashers, even if I had this higher on my list, I wouldn't call Peeping Tom a slasher. It's definitely more of like a horror thriller. I would kind of put it in that king. And yes, there are definitely elements of slasher in this thing. I feel like the people who would consider this a slasher are the fucking artsy fucks who hate horror but like this movie, and they just be like, well, in my eyes, I believe.
So it came out just a
few months before
Psycho. So it definitely, you know, if you flip flop it to where Psycho would be the first one, you know.
Well, we're gonna get that in a second too. We'll get to, I don't want to get spoilers of what coming up later. I think you guys would probably already know, but anyways, we'll definitely talk about that here in a minute. Let me ask you a question: did you get any titties in this movie?
Did I get any titties in this movie? No.
So I didn't either.
No.
Apparently,
I don't think
there is a European cut of this film that us British Americans didn't get, where he's taking the video, or he's in the modeling session with the girls and everything. The girl that had the scar on her face when he's taking a picture of her, or maybe it's the blonde girl in the bed before. Either way, one of the girls apparently
I'm trying to remember.
titties, just let them out there, and apparently they got it. We didn't. What the fuck, America? Anyways, and I'm thinking to myself, and the thing is, like, going back and doing these things, I'm noticing, like, whenever you go watch them on streaming or whatever version you get, more often than not, they give you the new uncut version. Because a lot of these old movies, you know, they got butchered when they came over here to America. Or, you know, even in the UK, whatever, they get butchered. And so it was almost rare at a certain time, like even like 20 years ago, to find like an uncut version of a certain movie. But today, it's like, that's not even a thing. It's almost always you get the original, how they released it. Not now, for some reason. And so I read that, and I was like, wait a minute, rated R for nudity? Like, I didn't get no nudity. Yeah, and I had to do a deep dive. And what even on IMDb, I had to like go out and like search, you know, I had to go through the, you know, sub-basements of Reddit to figure it out. Yeah, 2 versions. They put titties in one and no titties in ours. So this thing had such bad reviews, it ended Michael Powell's career as a director. Never directed a single movie after this. And this thing was only in cinema 5 days.
Wow.
Tyler, 5 days.
5
When I worked
days.
at the theater in our hometown of Bedford, you had to have a movie for the most part. Now, this was back when I worked there in the early 2000s. A film had to be there for at least 2 weeks before they pulled it. The only days I remember, we had 2 movies. We had some kind of shitty romance movie called Something New, and then a movie that I love, Grindhouse, which I knew would go over like a lead balloon in our town. But either way, those 2 movies at least got the 2-week treatment before they were pulled. Not Peeping Tom. 5 days. Nope. But the thing is, they got, like I said, eviscerated by critics. But what did you think about Peeping Tom? What was your thoughts on this movie?
Yeah, it was a little slow for me to get into, but you know, it had its moments of shining, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I had never really seen Peeping Tom, even though I've always wondered what it would be like to be a Peeping Tom. Not that
I'm the opposite. I've never seen the movie, but I knew what it was like to be one going in. So I was like, this guy, he knows what he's doing.
He's already, yeah. So and he obviously wanted the most beautiful women that he could get.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it was, yeah. I don't really. Well, I don't want to shit on it because you know, Peeping Tom. It was like one of the first. It was like the first time I'd seen it, so you can't really shit on it that bad. Now I do think that, you know, with what they had with the budget, you know, they did what they could.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't, you know, they didn't have a huge ass budget to do a lot of different things. So,
but again, you didn't really need it in this movie as much because, you know,
it ain't like you had a horror, you know, like, you know, somebody that was dressed up or something.
Exactly, yeah. There wasn't like elaborate kill scenes
or
like
just
that.
A plain old guy, and you know,
who just stick you with the end of his tripod. For me, I do like this movie. I'm giving it a solid thumbs up. I think it was hard to not compare it to Psycho. I've seen Psycho hundreds of times before this movie. This is my first time watch, like you. I've never seen Peeping Tom before. I knew its reputation. I knew of it. And I always heard the comparisons to Psycho. So I was excited to see this movie. You have some people, which you're out of your fucking mind, who will be like, well, actually, I think this is better than Psycho. Go fuck yourself. This is not better than Psycho. No. But I will say that when I watched this movie, I kept kind of... So that was the first thing I shouldn't have done. And I agree with that. I really wasn't trying to, but I couldn't help. And I think that's where it falls short for me is I never was fully on the Peeping Tom side. Whereas in Psycho... And I'm going to say a spoiler alert because, goddamn it, you should have seen Psycho by now. It's 1960s.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about Psycho in a minute, I know. But anyways, with Psycho, you're not supposed to know that Norman Bates is the killer until the end. You know what he's doing is wrong by covering up the murder of his, that his mother committed.
Yeah.
But you are still kind of on his side in a way. And I'm not saying maybe everyone is different. Maybe that's the thing. But I think generally audiences sympathize with Norman Bates a little bit more. With this movie, I think they give you opportunity to sympathize with, I forget the character's name already, but the Peeping Tom. And the fact that, we get a glimpse into his past. His father was kind of fucked up and was filming him and trying to scare him just to get that fear on the camera as well. So we know that, he had a shitty childhood. But at the same time, there's never a moment where I'm like, well, that should justify what you're doing. At least with Norman Bates, you get the impression that he was probably abused a lot more by his mother than this guy was by his father, I think, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't know. I think the acting was just a little... this guy had like a West German accent. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't be this way. This is going to come off racist, and I apologize. Don't cancel Tyler for my comments. But when I hear the German accent... I'm going Nazi or terrorist every single time, and I'm thinking psycho killer to begin with. So it was hard for me to be like, with Norman Bates, he is the boy next door. He is a guy that, if I saw him, he's charming. I would, and he probably wouldn't even have a beer with me because he probably don't drink beer. You know what I mean? But he'd be the kind of guy that's like, well, hey, take you out to lunch,
Yeah, he's trying to be friends with everybody.
He's very friendly. And whereas this guy is just awkward and weird through and through.
He didn't have the friendly part to go with it. He was set on doing.
And while you can argue that like maybe Norman Bates has to be because he runs a motel,
Yeah.
well, this guy's the landlord of an entire building. So it's like he also should have those social skills, but he doesn't. So it's just like, I don't know. It's hard for me to. So that was part of it. Now, I love the concept of this movie. People making snuff films. I did a short film. Again, I don't try to put my own personal shit in here, but like I did a movie about a killer who is putting people into his snuff films, right? And so I like that. Clearly I didn't get it from this movie. Obviously, I didn't even see this movie, but I love that concept. I like this guy has like a hidden room in his apartment, and it's this dark room where he has all these movies. I like that aspect of it. I think the actor did a tremendous job. I'm shitting on the character aspects that make him likable. I'm not saying anything about this guy's acting. This guy's acting was incredible. I thought he did perfect in this role, as did everybody in this one. But again, I don't know. And maybe because I've only seen it once. I've been known to watch a movie a second time without thinking about it and to be like, holy shit, like that was better than I thought, and it would become a favorite. But Psycho I fell in love with from day one, whereas this one I didn't.
Oh, I fell in love with Psycho like the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. No, it's brilliant. So anyway, but Peeping Tom. So as you mentioned, 7.6, 149,000 box office. It has a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes.
A lot of Peeping Toms out there.
People loved it. Yeah. Again, I think this is another example of the fact that it was kind of an undiscovered movie for so long. Yeah. That and of course the only thing you would hear about it if you did research it would be like, wow, that movie tanked and did shit, and then you finally watch it like, well, that's not bad at all, and that's the thing I've really realized about doing this show all together is even in the early years of cinema, critics just hate horror. Like seriously, it's just that for whatever reason it puts a bad taste in their mouth, and it will never. And I think we've come a long way since then, and people do kind of put horror in a higher regard. Not just horror fans, I'm talking just fans in general. But even then they don't want to come out and be like, well, I like horror films. They want the coin elevated horror has been invented because people don't want to be like, I like horror movies. I like those horror movies right there, but they're not horror movies. That's something that people in drama can get into. So we're gonna call it elevated horror. It's like, well, fuck you. Horror's horror. Like that's and it is a big spectrum. It's a big genre with so many little pockets. And that's what I think makes this genre great, is that you can be a horror fan and not have to like every aspect of it. You can be like, well, I'm not really big on this stuff, but there's enough there for you to like. Unfortunately, these pricks, they only like that little corner. They don't want to explore the rest.
They expand very
and
wide.
That's what's funny about an actor like or a director like Quentin Tarantino is like people who love Quentin Tarantino probably wouldn't really like to hang out with him and watch movies with him because Tarantino, while he does have his artsy side, he loves just down and dirty drive-in splatter films. Like that's just who he is. And in fact, when people ask him like, "What's your favorite movies of all time?" He's going through the list. They're just like, "Oh, you like that stuff?"
Yeah,
but not doing like, "Well, I like the Romeo and Juliet." No, he's just like, "No, I like trashy slasher movies." And it's just like, "Oh, well, why are you making?" But they can't wrap their head around that. And so I don't know. It's funny to me because I said I got a lot of friends who are big like Tarantino fans, and I'm like, you guys wouldn't even be able to hang with him because you don't appreciate the movies that he appreciates. You know what I mean? But it is what it is.
Speaking of trash films, I accidentally ran into My Bloody Valentine.
Which one, the original or remake?
The remake.
Love it.
You love the remake?
I'm a fan. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's as good as the original, but it's so trashy. Dude, you got a naked chick with big ass fake titties and high heels just running, and I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, plot wise makes no sense, but it's like that's me if I'm directing this thing. It's like, wait, there's a chick with big hooters around here, and she's willing to just get her in here. That's not the plot. I don't care. Get her in there. Run. You're gonna get killed. It's not a great movie. I like it. My Bloody Valentine. I'm a fan. Again,
it plays to certain people's lives.
It does. I just like the, even though the ending, I saw the twist coming a mile away. I don't know. I enjoyed the ride with it, but we're getting off topic. Okay, we're off topic. Okay,
we're getting off topic.
So there you have it, guys. Number 3, Peeping Tom. So that moves us now to our number 2 horror film of 1960, the winner of the Silver Skull Award, and I am of course talking about Eyes Without a Face. Basically, you got this surgeon who, unfortunately, he has an auto accident that involves his daughter. and permanently disfigures her face. And he's going to crazy lengths to right this wrong. Go through some notes I got here. Of course, this is based on a novel of the same name. Very controversial at the time when it came out due to the graphic nature of the surgery scenes. Of course, it's in black and white, which I'm sure it would have made color, although we'll talk about that a little bit later. However, initially this thing got bad reviews. It's French, go figure.
Yeah.
However, they have drastically turned around in recent years. Like, this is now considered a classic. It's funny, when the guy went to go make this movie, the producers told him this. I got a listener, this is funny. The producer, now remember, this is based on a novel. Yeah. So he's just like, hey, here's my novel. I'm going to take the words and put it on the screen. And the producer said, well, you can. However, you need to cut out any gore because French censors ain't going to like it. Any animal cruelty, take it out because American censors won't like it. And you can't have any connection to like mad science because the German censors will be mad. And it's like, you're butchering this book right here. It's like, that's the three, but anyways. However, the director would go on to hire the screenwriters who wrote Diabolic, which we covered on this show, which I'm also a huge fan of, and the Alfred Hitchcock film Vertigo, which honestly, as much as I love Hitchcock, I suck that guy off all the time, wasn't big on Vertigo, just me personally. At one festival that this movie played at, it was reported that 7 different people fainted during the surgery scene. So, you got any notes for us on this one?
So this one's got a 7.6 rating. I couldn't find the budget they had, but the gross was a little over $60,000. That's all.
That seems criminally low, but you're right. Yeah, I didn't actually I couldn't find a budget or a.
It was very hard to find.
Office.
Yeah, the budget in the box office.
Okay, yeah. So yeah. Actually, don't get me wrong. That does seem criminally low, but I get it. At the same, we just talked about Pee-Pee Tom, how it struggled to break through. I'm sure this had the same struggles as well.
Well, some of these, it did receive a high rating.
Oh yeah. No,
for. I don't know. I guess I was, because I watched it, and one of the things that I always hated or scared me the most was a blank face.
Yeah.
And that it always just
truly the most creepiest thing about this movie.
It is.
It truly is.
And I just like, man, it's like it gets to you at a certain way that some movies just don't go. To that point, but the surgery scenes, don't eat during the surgery scenes. And,
for me, I watched this a long time ago, and it stuck out. And really, the thing that stuck out the most, because even after I watched it, I practically forgot the plot, but the one thing I remembered was that girl and her face.
Yeah.
And so, many years later, I would buy the Criterion Collection. I spent the extra money on this bad boy, rewatched it, and I fell in love with it on a level I haven't in such a while. In fact, at the end of every decade that we cover here on the Retro Horror Academy, each member will usually release their own top 10 of movies we covered so far. And I can tell you right now, as of right now, this movie is going to be in my top 10 at the end of the 60s. I'm almost positive. I love this movie.
That only grossed $1,600 internationally.
Oh, see, that's what I'm saying. That's just criminal. This movie, while I think storyline-wise, it follows the basic B movie plots of earlier mad science movies. Down to, you have a mad scientist that maybe he's not even a villain initially. What he's doing it for the right reasons, but he's doing the wrong things to get to that point.
Yeah.
And, you feel bad for him, but at the same time, you're like, dude, you got to go about this a different way. You feel bad for the daughter, obviously. She's having to live like this. And to a certain point, it makes you wonder throughout the movie, like, how much does she know the father's doing? And at what point is she maybe as guilty? Now, by the end of the movie, she does get conscious or whatever, but at what point does she want that beauty so much? It may not even beauty. I think that's another thing. It's not necessarily beauty. It's the normality of it. She just wants to be normal again, which I think, again, I guess speaking for myself, I've always been that guy on the outskirts. I've always been an outsider. I've never been a good-looking guy or anything like that, so I can identify with that on a certain level. Now, I'm not horribly disfigured like this girl, so don't get the idea there. Although you'd be mean to say that. But anyways, but no, but I can truly, my heart goes out to this young daughter here. You do got the mad scientist. You got his sadistic German. Again, I think she was German. She had like a Germanish accent, but his assistant, that was female assistant, that's helping him out. Who again, is she blinded with love almost for him, as opposed to again, is she doing this because she's a sadistic maybe, or just because she's in love? You never fully know. And I think that's another thing I love about this movie is it's not just like other mad science movies where it's all just plain laid out, two dimensional. Every character has different layers to them.
It was. I'm trying to think of what the word I want to use, but it had a certain, like, I don't know. You didn't really see a whole lot of movies that would go like what they did with
this one.
Yeah,
well, it's disturbing, and I think it's the thing with previous mad science movies. Even if the concept would be disturbing, you never saw it in action. Like, you never saw the surgery, obviously. Yeah. But then, like, usually the outcome was never that bad. Even like Frankenstein, I guess the idea of stitching together a bunch of dead body parts and reanimating them could be horrifying. But the way they do it, it just looks like, oh, it's just Boris Karloff in makeup or whatever. You're not disturbed by it. Whereas the aftermath of this mask that this girl wears, the face she has, when the skin is being rejected, or her body's rejecting the new face, it looks terrifying. And again, with a lot of those early movies I mentioned, the definition of horror has changed so much. And even though this is in my horror movie collection at home, because I'm a nerd and I have all my movies broken up into different genres, the argument could be made this is definitely more drama, and I think that's fair. This is definitely more of a character study of these characters and the horrible situation they're kind of going through. Yeah. However, disturbing nonetheless. And that face mask, even though she's not a villain, she's the victim. It's still horrifying. Like, if I was to run downstairs into a basement and see her in the corner, I'm shitting myself, crying. I'll probably faint, have the heart attack, I'm dead, and she is just the victim, It should be noted that the mask was actually what inspired John Carpenter to make his mask plain and featureless, because he was like, he remembered this movie.
Which makes it a scary mask, because, there's no facial features. And
so when I first heard about this movie, I was about a face. I had a book. It was like 200 something movies you got to see before you die or something like that. Maybe it's in thousands. I don't remember. But anyway, opened it up, and before I even read it, that was the picture they had, with just her with the face, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Like I was shocked just looking at the picture, and then when you read it, you're like, "Oh, okay." I assume she was like some kind of ghost or like a psycho killer, but it's like it's still like, even when like in her heart she's good. That's still a scary face, So, what do you think about the movie overall, like on the whole?
When I was watching this, I was thinking of when Batman came out. Mm-hmm. Jack Nicholson had his girls wearing the face mask.
I didn't even think about that. You're absolutely right.
And I was like, yeah, they're obviously not as good looking as the girls that Jack had.
Yeah,
but for that to be, I really feel like that was the main.
I would guarantee Tim Burton was inspired by this. I would almost, cause same thing, because when she removes that mask and you can see her face is fucked from the makeup or whatever, it's like,
it kind of shows you that it's not going to fix it. So we're just going to throw a white mask on it, which for some reason it gives me chills.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I don't like a what would you say? Eyes without a face.
The featureless.
The featureless. Yeah. So it's like, when I was seeing that in the movie, I was like, man, that was just making my skin crawl.
It's what makes like the big-headed aliens kind of freaky, because again, it's just the eyes, but then it's just nothing from here down, Or shadow people, same thing. You hear about people with sleep paralysis and the shadow people, same thing. There's no features, so you can't. With features, you can see what someone's thinking, even if they're If they got a good poker face, you can still kind of be like, well, this guy, he's definitely playing a feature or featureless face. There is none of that. It's just shit,
And then the fact that they're using just the white outing of the mask, which is come very popular.
Oh yeah. Well, back when I had a previous YouTube show called The Movie Phantom, and I didn't get from this. But it was definitely like a Michael Myers kind of thing, just that idea of being able to conceal your identity behind the mask that's just, got nothing on it, So what do you think about this movie overall, though? Like, at the end of the day,
they give it a 7.6 rating on IMDb, and, for somebody that doesn't necessarily like, that kind of thing, I would still keep it at that height.
Yeah.
The budget, probably wasn't as
I
big.
can imagine. Yeah.
But still, though, they're at number 2 for a reason.
Yeah.
That's because they took what they had and they made it great.
Dude, awesome. Yeah.
And it's like, that when you're, I'm almost 40 years old and I'm still like, man, it still makes me cringe. And, it's like, gives you that weird feeling like if you, like you said, you walk down the stairs.
Yeah.
You're looking around going, making sure there ain't nobody with, just a plain mask standing in the corner somewhere and trying to scare the shit out of me. But you had somebody that was determined to make it, her husband, the doctor, he was determined.
The
father,
yeah.
Yes, not the husband. Well, he was determined to fix what was, which, like you said, you can't be mad at him.
Yeah.
All he wanted what was right for her. So,
yeah.
But maybe he didn't really go through the greatest techniques of.
I guess it boils down what lines you willing to cross, to help. Yeah.
He was willing to go the full distance.
He definitely was.
He did not care. He just wanted it back to the what it was. So, but for what it was, yeah.
There was an 80s music video, and I forget who sang it. It's some girl. It was recently showed in you can hear it in the trailer for Maxine when it came out last year. The song is called Creatures of the Night, and the director of The Exorcist actually directed this music video for this woman. But the video was basically, it was a woman, and remember it's the 80s, so you couldn't come out and say it, but this is what they were implying, was she's kind of in a loveless marriage, and she meets a guy, a stranger, who basically introduces her to this like underground sex club. All the guys, or even the girls, are also wearing that featureless mask.
Yeah.
Dude, and I remember as a kid, because my grandparents were all about MTV at the time, and they would always record the videos onto VHS. So like I remember my grandmother had like 3 or 4 videos of just music videos. Yeah. And I would, watch them from time to time. And I remember that come up, and it was just, again, I wasn't scared, but it was just eerie. I remember I didn't like it. I just remember I liked the song. I didn't like the video. And I just remember thinking like, and I even then, I guess I kind of knew it was probably the mask, but as an adult, I can look back like, no, it's definitely the mask. Like, that's what creeped me out was that mask. So, well, guys,
give me the eyes wide shut.
Yeah, same concept, yeah.
Which I will go ahead and say it. I love it.
Never saw it, never watched it. Know all about it, but yeah, never seen it. So this thing has a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, which
pretty.
I'd almost say underrated. Give it the 100. Give the full hundo, but. All right, guys, we didn't realize this is our inaugural episode of having us tag team this. We didn't realize we'd be over the 2-hour mark already. And so if you're still with us, hey, you're a trooper.
Yeah.
We love you. Thank you very much. And we'll try to trim this down in future episodes.
Sometimes you just
can't.
You can't do it.
Because you got movies like what's about to come up right now. What's our number one horror film?
Number one horror film is Psycho.
It's a story about, it's a guy
Anthony
Perkins, who he's running a motel. And what happens is we got Marion Crane, who has just basically robbed her workplace a bunch of money, and she's on the run, and she stops at this motel. However, the son clearly has some kind of issues, and his mother may be murderous.
Mother was kind of a bitch.
Kind of. So, run through the list here. We got directed by Alfred Hitchcock, the master, based on the novel by Robert Bloch, who would also go on to write Jaws and a few other things, but those were really his 2 big heavyweights. Stars Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh. Critics were divided when this thing came out initially, and again, they were disgusted by what they saw. However, the people loved it. And this thing was a huge financial success and a major box office smash. And then the critics were like, well, we kind of like this too. And they did this in the same year. It wasn't like Peeping Tom or Eyes Without Face when it took a long time for people to be like, well, actually, looking back. No, within the space of a year, people were just like, actually, this is actually a damn good movie. It's like, no, it was from the beginning. You dicks were just like on your high horse of anti-horror. I actually did, when I was doing my research here, I read, and I forget the guy's name in the publication. I want to say it's like the New York Post or something like that. But it was some kind of publication, and they literally wrote this was a disgusting film and that he should be ashamed of himself, blah, 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 blah. The morals of this country are going down because we're showing filth like this on the screen. became a huge hit, gets nominated for multiple awards. And his reviews like, well, my top 10 movies of the year, Psycho was actually, a surprise hit. And it's like, dude, go fuck yourself. You are such a scumbag. Movie was nominated for 4 Academy Awards. Nominated, didn't win. Bullshit.
They definitely should have won.
Yo, absolutely. Dude, the fact that Hitchcock never won an award for directing pisses me off to this day.
Who is the people that nominate this?
So the Academy is basically made up of, it was a group of people like Hollywood elites, so it's basically like filmmakers, producers, writers, stars, in the early 30s. And then when they kind of got together, as time would go on, they would add other people from the business in. So there's a ton of people that's actually in the Academy Awards today. But they're snooty pricks who don't recognize greatness when it's in front of them. Yeah. This thing would set a standard of what was you can show on the screen in theaters, and I'll get a little bit more of that here in a minute. This is actually considered, as I mentioned earlier with Peeping Tom, a early example of the slasher film. Again, I respect that. I always call this the grandfather of slasher, where I don't call it a full-on slasher movie, but it's definitely got a lot of the elements that would go on to become, slasher. This thing would be followed by 3 sequels, which would include a made-for-TV movie. It would be followed by a remake and a TV series. Bates is actually based off real-life serial killer Ed Gein. After Hitchcock bought the rights, he had his assistants go out and buy all the books so that nobody could read it and have the ending spoiled for them.
That's crazy.
Paramount refused to finance this movie. We ain't making this. This ain't gonna make any money. We are not going to. And so Hitchcock's like, fine. I'll do it myself. Can you guys just distribute it? And even then, they still fucked with him, but basically, they said, we'll distribute it, but we're not going to pay you a director's fee. So, they worked out a deal where he would get a percentage of his box office gross. Guess what? Worked out pretty good for Mr. Hitchcock.
Yeah,
so, he made more than he would have made if they would have paid him straight up. So, Bates' character was actually made more sympathetic in the movie than he was in the book. In the book, he was a fat, grizzly man who just hated women, and he was very upfront about it, and much more brutal. So here they definitely toned him down and made him more sympathetic.
He's more of a nerd.
Yeah, they definitely made him more. Yeah, they made him
more of a nerd.
And they extended the Marion Crane role. She did not have all this storyline going into it. She literally was just a chapter in the book. Yeah. She shows up, gets killed, that's it. And so Hitchcock decided, you know what, let's put a little bit more life in this character. Another brilliant decision. So the house and motel sets were actually built on the same stage as the original Phantom of the Opera. Doesn't mean anything, but I think it's just cool to think that, like, it's
was built.
It's the house. Yeah, the sets were torn down. They went ahead and built it right there, and it's like the same area that had the underground tunnels and the opera house is now the Psycho place, which I think is still there. I don't know if they moved it. I think they may have moved the sets, and it's no longer in the original shooting location. But still, yeah, how cool is that? Hitchcock was always known for his cameos in the movies, and he gets his cameo out of the way pretty early on. He's in the window at the workplace where Marion works, just outside. You see him for a split second. Rumor had it, as movies would go on, his movies would go on, people were so distracted by the cameos that they were waiting for it. And he knew he had to get out of the way early, because if he didn't, they wouldn't be paying attention. So as soon as he could get it in there, he threw it in there. Wow. Of course, the shower scene would go on to become stuff of legends. There's been full-on documentaries about the shower scene, multiple videos of dissecting this thing. And it really is just a marvel of filmmaking for its time, even, where, it's funny that to this day, people would say who watch this movie that they can vividly remember seeing red blood go down the drain, and everyone's like, this was black and white. And even if it was in color, it wouldn't have been for that, because they used chocolate syrup, because it shows up better than what red would have showed up on a black and white camera. And so it was Bosco basically going down the sink or the tub. But people will still tell you, like, well, maybe, but I remember, and that's how effective this movie was, that people have their own, like, memories that are altered because of this movie or whatever. Of course, I forget, I think like 2 weeks maybe a little under 2 weeks to film the shower scene alone. And I forget how many cuts they had to make. But the fact that literally it happened so quickly, you never fully see any penetration of the knife. It's what you think you're seeing. And it's shot so well that people will tell you, oh no, dude, she gets butchered in that shower. I remember seeing it. She gets cut up. And it's like, you never saw anything. You saw the knife retracting, coming back. You saw her fighting away. But that's all you saw. And it's truly a masterclass of cinema. Yeah, I mean, I could. I'm glossing over. I'm apologize for glossing over the best movie here, but we could go on for hours about that scene alone. Bernard Herrmann, who did the score of this movie, when he initially did the score, Hitchcock told him no music over the death scene of Marion Crane. I just want that to be just, you hear the sound, the stabbing, that's it. I think it'll be more impactful. And Bernard Herrmann was like, all right. But he started doing the movie, started recording the music, and he was like, you know what? Let me just add it. Let me do my own thing. If you don't like it, we don't use it. And Hitchcock loved it so much, and it's so iconic. The strings, it's so that he loved it so much that he literally went ahead and doubled the money he was paying Bernard Herrmann. Loved it so much. Fuck you, you're getting more money because that was so awesome. And you know what? Well deserved and good on Hitchcock. Like, that's another thing. It's his money. Yeah. He could have easily been like, I don't have the money to pay you that. He did it because he recognized greatness.
I think that if they took that out, if they would just let that plane, it would.
I couldn't imagine what it sounds like, just water running in a stabbing. I feel like it would lessen the impact.
Because you're going to hear the knife press up against the.
Well, I mean, even if you added just the sound effects, it would still be like, I don't know. And I'm not saying it couldn't work with just no music. There's plenty of movies out there that have no score and it works just fine. But I think we've already seen it. Yeah. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And it's like, you can't do it.
You'll never forget
it's like Jaws. Yeah. I couldn't imagine that without the music. Yeah. It's
if they don't.
You couldn't. I mean, I'd just be like, no.
You know how they like to bring in the music whenever the bad person's bring it into the picture.
Exactly.
You know how boring that would be?
Yeah.
Like,
that's what I'm thinking. Like, and not just that, but think about how many times this has been spoofed in years. Anytime you see any show or movie where they're kind of making fun of the shower scene, they still use that music. Yeah. Like, if they don't knock off the music, it's that music. I remember, I believe it's Vacation, the original one with Chevy Chase, where when he's got
the camcorder,
and he's she's in the shower scene in the first one, and of course, and he kind of to your front, and we get the Belly D'Angelo on full display in that movie. Anyways, back to what we're talking about. Speaking of showers, Janet Leigh refused. She would take a shower if needed. Would never take too many showers after filming this movie. Too scared. You realize how vulnerable you are in a shower. And that is so true. I remember the only time I ever got really freaked out in real life was I was probably in high school. I was taking a shower. And I was home alone. At the time I was. And I had the door open, so I was showering. We lived in a small apartment. And so anyways, I'm showering, and I hear a noise. And I was like, what the fuck? And I look out the shower curtain, I peek out, and I see a shadow move across like a picture frame in the hall. And like I lose my shit. I'm like, what the? And I'm freaking out, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, like there's a burglar in the house or something. And here I am like naked in the shower, like what the fuck? And then it was my stepdad walking by, and he's like, oh hey. I'm like, oh hey, I was like, all right.
Scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, like I'm terrified. So it's like I get the being vulnerable.
You almost want to shower with the curtain open?
Almost. I mean, at that point, like you want to watch me, make sure no one jumps me from behind.
Well, I mean, stay out of hotels with curtains.
So Bernard Herrmann would actually take his score of this movie, the entire thing, and actually take it on tour. He would actually do like concerts of this. I'm like that. I'm not big on like classical and instrumental, music in general, but I would definitely watch the Psycho theme being played or the entire score being played. That would
be pretty awesome.
Of course, it was very controversial at the time for a number of reasons. We mentioned earlier that they were pushing the envelope of what you can show on camera, and which is why I think they were trying to why Eyes Without Face got hit with you can't show that graphic surgery scene, or while Peeping Tom got busted you can't show women getting stabbed by whatever. And here they're hitting all the taboos. So the fact that we get Marion Crane in her bra and panties on 2 different occasions, big no. Yeah. Can't do that. We had Marion Crane and Sam hanging out in the Sam Loomis, by the way, where they got the name for Dr. Loomis from
Loomis,
Halloween. Anyways, but Marion Crane and Sam Loomis in a motel, even though they don't show anything, they don't even make out nothing like that. It's implied they just got them fucking.
Yeah,
can't do that, but
you can't.
Hitchcock did. Norman Bates, of course, cross-dressing. This ain't today, guys. No, it was a different time. That was a big no-no, but he broke that rule. And the one I think is the funniest, and it's so crazy, but it's so true. the toilet flushing. They flush a toilet, and people were just like, you can't have that. It was believed at this time that the acts in a bathroom were so sacred that we don't show it. If you watch any TV show from before, I guess, this time, your Live the Beaver, My Three Sons, shit like that, you're not seeing anybody go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
You're not even referencing the bathroom. No, you can't. But Hitchcock was like, you know what? It's my money. I'm doing it.
We're gonna make a bathroom.
Doing it. And so went to the bathroom. He enforced a very strict no late admissions policy when he did this movie. So whenever he was, because he didn't want people to kind of walk in midway through. Marion Crane's already dead. Holy shit, she's the star, right? Like, wasn't she the headliner? Oh my God, what the, And so he put into that. And everyone was like, oh, it's so revolutionary. I can't believe, he came up with that. He didn't. Actually, the director of Diabolic did it a few years prior in France. So, because he had the same thing, you have I won't give it away if you haven't seen it, but there's a scene where
Hopefully
basically...
you've seen it.
Yes,
Hopefully.
And so, like I said, we definitely covered it on here. I think everyone at home, hopefully, if you're listening to this. But anyway, there's a scene where someone, kind of comes back when you think they're dead, and same thing.
I was trying to remember how much, because she's not in the movie a lot.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was trying to think of what it was that I seen, how much they actually paid her just to do.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I know she was considered like the star,
Yeah,
even though she bites it like a half hour in, and there's still plot after that. So, anyways. Here. Oh yeah, so he wouldn't let any of the stars do publicity tours. He was afraid they was going to spoil the ending, so he purposely had them, pull them back, and he did all the press junket himself. And of course, he didn't do a critical screening.
Yeah.
So here's where the theory comes in right now. So typically in this time, you would have a screening before the movie came out for critics only. They did that for a long time. They still pretty much do it today as well. Because, you got to have those trailers that's just like, Roger Ebert says, 2 thumbs up. Or, Cisco, or Gene Shalit said, movie of the year, It's like, well, how the hell they see it already? It hadn't come out till Friday. Well, that's what they did, private screening. He didn't let that happen, and the critics shit on it. And I've heard stories from other movies that said the same thing when they decided, like, we're not going to do a critic screening. All Mac bad reviews out the gate. Because critics feel like this entitled sense of like, if I can't watch it early,
First class on the Titanic.
punishment. Exactly, yeah, punishment for not letting me watch it, and so that's where they think a lot of it came from, where they shit on it just because they're like, well, if he didn't let us watch it early, we're gonna ruin it for him, and no one else is gonna want to watch it. Well, then everybody watched it, loved it, and they're like, oh, well, now we kind of reassessed it. I guess it was a good movie, and that's why it turned around pretty quickly for people.
They didn't like that he was doing it his own way.
Yeah. Oh, not just that, but I think, honestly, he was pushing the boundaries. And I think that's another thing that people were very uncomfortable with. Despite horrible reviews in London, which one critic literally said, the worst film ever created.
Wow.
Not just the worst film this year, not just the worst film from America. This guy literally said, in the history of cinema, this was the worst garbage he's ever saw. It broke all kinds of attendance records in London. Go fuck yourself.
So, yeah, let's say,
Yeah.
who's that guy that said that? Because nobody's going to remember your name.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I don't even have it written down. Not sure who said it. Guess what? We remember Hitchcock and Psycho, but we don't remember you, buddy.
Yeah.
This thing would break box office records in Asia, Canada, France, South America, UK, and America. Became the highest grossing horror film of 1960.
Yep.
However, it was only the second highest grossing film of any genre that year. I think it was Spartacus that came out that got it, which I don't want to take nothing away from Stanley Kubrick. He's my boy too, but putting Psycho over Spartacus, I'm sorry. Janet Leigh would actually win a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress. Well deserved. On Martin Scorsese's list of scariest movies ever made, as it deserves to be. Love this story. So Walt Disney, later on, would refuse Hitchcock to film at Disneyland because you made, quote, that disgusting Psycho movie.
Oh, man.
Yep.
Hey, what's Walt Disney doing now?
Oh, well, unfortunately, he's doing the same thing that Hitchcock's. So they both wound up in the same place. But Ed Gein would also inspire the serial killers in the upcoming or the later films, Deranged, which I honestly haven't seen, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Which I love.
and Silence of the Lambs. They're all based on Ed Gein. So, what notes do you got?
So this one came in at an 8.5 on IMDb. I'm very comfortable saying it's much higher than that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know it's just like you said, the critic score, but
Yeah.
they took a great write and made it into a masterpiece film.
Exactly.
Their budget was 800,000.
Mm-hmm.
Their box office was 50 million plus.
In $60s. You know what I mean?
60s.
Like back then, that
Yes.
thing is
In the
insane.
60s.
Blockbuster.
$50 million, and you would think that has to be the repeat of people going back.
Oh yeah.
See it going back.
What did I just watch? Oh my God! No, I gotta see it again.
Again.
I can't believe it. You know, I didn't see her get killed early on. That came out freaking nowhere. The fact that Norman Bates was mother. It's like you would have to be like, we're going again. Like we're gonna watch that again.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Anytime you're just having a bad day, you just throw this movie in.
This is a film I can watch at any time.
You can
Absolutely.
just watch it at any time.
Nope.
I love it. Anthony Perkins.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Fantastic job.
It wasn't. It was like the mother. I guess the shadow that they show that they kept her as a shadow.
Yeah.
Which a lot of films, I guess they don't like doing that kind of thing, but that's what she needed. That's the part that she needed. You needed that secret.
Well, I think honestly, I was fortunate. I don't know how the hell I watched this movie when I was a kid and did not know the twist. So I was truly shocked. And it's funny because if I was to watch this today, I'd already know. Oh, obviously he's both, but I really didn't know. Now again, I was a kid when I watched it, so I can't imagine. And I remember reading one critic's review who was like, "Well, you can see it coming a mile away." I was like, "No, you didn't. There's no fucking way." Because at this point, we didn't have anything like this. This is the first time, and the fact that, like you said, they used it to shadows. Well, it wasn't even Anthony Perkins who played the person who kills her in the shadow, because he's actually, or in the shower, was because actually Anthony Perkins had to go. He was doing Broadway on the side, so whenever he would get a break, he would go out, shoot his do his plays on the weekends, and then come back and do it. So he wasn't even available when they were shooting the shower scene, which is why they used a stand-in and everything else. And I forget who they said the stand-in was, but for people to be like, well, you could just tell by the. I was like, no, you couldn't. Like you didn't know. Now rewatching it now and kind of knowing it, clearly it's a guy. Even in the person, it's much bigger than a frail old woman or whatever.
Yeah.
But still. Doesn't matter. It's just it works perfectly.
Not knowing the information that when in 1960.
Yeah.
So, man.
Again, that's just a bitter critic who's crying because he couldn't get a free watch.
I think I don't say this a whole lot, but the IMDb rating probably would be like a 9.99 almost.
Honestly, yeah, I'd even throw a 10 in there.
To me, personally, it would just be a 10. But
the fact that you're right, the fact that it's not even higher than that is criminally low.
I don't know if maybe they just had a bad day of, getting the ratings, but it wasn't like it left you wanting to watch it again.
Yeah.
Especially if you had never seen it before.
Like I said, this movie, when it came out, I was hooked instantly. My aunt, who is funny, I have multiple aunts, but I have one, she's not really a horror person, although she does like certain ones. But it was her that I kind of fell in love with the Psycho series. I remember watching the first two at her house. And again, not knowing the plot or twist of either one of them. And I remember seeing the first one. And again, I was a kid, so I went into it, and I would do this maybe 2 more times before I was able to kind of get out my own fucking head and not worry about that. But as a kid, I just assumed black and white just meant old. Like, I don't want to watch this; it's old. But I watched it and I was like, oh my god, like this is brilliant. And like I said, as a kid, a lot of stuff kind of went over my head, I guess. But like the core concept of the guy or this mother killing a woman in the shower, like there's nothing that goes over your head there. Like you're watching a stark murder, and I was glued. And then just the investigation afterward, and again that conflicting feeling of like, you kind of want him to get away with it in a way. And may not get away with the murders. I'm not saying that. You don't know he's the murderer yet. You think it's mother, but he has this deranged love for his mother that he's going to cover the murders up. And for some reason, you do want him to get away. And there's a moment where, and I'm not saying anything that hasn't been analyzed or said before, so I don't think I'm like ripping off another, commenter or another critic, because it's just true. But there's a scene where whenever he's trying to get rid of the car in the swamp, and it's sinking, and you're just like, all right, we're good. And then it stops for a second.
Yep.
And you're just like, oh, no, sink, go back,
Go.
please, go back down. And Hitchcock lets it linger for a second, and then it goes.
finally goes.
And you get this relief, and you're thinking to yourself, you're essentially watching a guy cover up a murder. Why are you that emotionally invested in that character? You shouldn't be. You should be like, no. You should be like these asshole critics who are just like, this is immoral and wrong. But you're not, because he found a way to bring you in and you sympathize with Norman. Even if what he's doing is wrong. And now, even by the end, though, you should flip back to your side. It's like, okay, shit, you're the killer. Fuck you. But still, yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's just brilliant.
I even love Bates Motel.
You know, I never watched it. I was afraid it would kind of taint what I love about this. Because the sequels would progressively get worse. I seen all four. I saw the remake. The remake was ass. But yeah, the approach get worse. So when the show came out, I was just kind of leery of it. But I've heard a lot of people say good things about it. So
it's really good. I mean,
if you say it's good, I may go check it out. I may at some point.
It's definitely worth checking out.
I may have to check it out.
And it's not just the story; it's the people. I can't remember who was playing Norman, but
Vera Farmiga. Oh, Norman Bates was Eddie Highmore, or Freddie Highmore. Sorry, and then Norma Bates is Vera Farmiga from Conjuring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he had the. Man, I was trying to think of that other movie.
He did a lot of stuff when he was a kid. I can't remember what the fuck he did. He did like a. Isn't he the guy that's in a wizard shit? Or is that someone else I'm thinking of?
Lord of the Rings?
Not Lord of the Rings. Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
But they did like a spinoff. The Fantastic Beasts, Magical Places. Shit. Anyways, that's and it may not be him. I may be, again, these white kids all look alike to me. You show me a picture of like Eddie Redmayne, and Eddie Redmayne's the one that's in the Harry Potter spinoff. Eddie Highmore, I know he did a big movie. God damn it. Anyways, we'll come back to it.
Now I remember what he was.
What?
He played a Norman played a like in the Bates Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
He played a doctor.
Yeah, the Good Doctor.
The Good Doctor.
Show you,
Yeah.
He did. We'll find it afterward. He did a movie before this. Like he was a big child star in the movies, and then he transitioned to TV and everything. Yeah, you're right. That's him. Yeah, that's him.
But I think that he played a hell of a role in The Good Doctor.
Yeah, he's a good actor. Yeah,
he's a good actor. Definitely I think you need to.
I'll definitely give it. I'll
put it on your list to watch.
Put it on the list. So back to the '60s Psycho. Like I said, I can't say enough high marks about this movie. It's just like you said, you can put it on anytime. It hits every note perfectly. It's well made, well executed. The acting's great. All the stars do their job perfectly. It's
they
looks
made
great.
50 times the money.
Yeah, and again, they told Hitchcock, well, you can have a percentage of the gross.
That was a smart idea.
Very smart. Like, yeah, because I could be wrong. I think his director's fee was going to be like maybe 100,000, 200,000, which is good money for a director at that time.
Yeah.
But the fact that and he was willing to take a cut. He's like, I'll go less, and they said, well, we don't really want to do that, but we'll give you. Tell you what, we won't pay you, but we'll give you a little bit of the pie. And eventually end up with that money, he would end up buying stake in the studio so that he can no longer have to listen to dickheads. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him because even though he bought a share in the studio, other people had controlling interest. Yeah, so it still didn't work out for him. But anyways, that was.
You would think you would give him more.
Because he's the bastard. You think he'd be like, dude, like you're right. Here you go. And I don't know. I always feel bad for Hitchcock because his later films will be plagued with studio interference, and it's bullshit. But anyway, so that's really all I got to say about Psycho. You got anything to add? Your thoughts?
I think that it's definitely going to be hard to beat. Even in the '60s total.
As of right now, my number one movie. Now I'm not gonna lie. There are two other films in the '60s that are going to top it.
You think so?
Well, for me. Just for me.
For you?
I already know because I've already seen them and I love them. So they're already on top. But I don't know. Now, as far as like IMDb ratings and whatever, this will be the king for a long time. But for me personally, on my top 10 at the end of the year or at the end of the decade, this will be sitting comfortably at number 3. I can't imagine anything topping that. But the two that I got picked out for me personally will beat it.
That
But
would be interesting. I can't wait to find out what the
It's-
two you have in front.
gonna be good stuff. Alrighty, so I mean, we pretty much we've hit the 60s. We have covered
The 60s.
We have covered the 60s. We got our new inductees. We got our new members.
Yeah.
So as of
Appreciate
right
it.
now, hey, I appreciate you coming on. We'll be back next year, or not next year. We'll be back,
For the next
I don't know
year.
when we'll be doing the next episode, but we'll be back with 1961. So guys, that's all we got. Any final words?
No, it was good. It was fun.
Oh,
it
yeah.
was actually, like I got to see some movies that I hadn't seen.
That's my big draw with this whole series. Is I get to watch movies that I don't normally get to watch, and yeah.
I'm going to tell you though, honestly, The Village of the Damned,
Mhm.
I would put it a little higher.
You put it a little higher. Yeah,
I would because I just like that concept of how that
Yeah.
movie. I don't know why it is the whole crazy ass children thing.
Yeah.
What that do? But Psycho,
Yeah.
crazy ass children.
exactly. All right, guys. Well, on behalf of Tyler, this is Daniel, and we want to thank you for coming to the Retro Horror Academy. Guys, you're dismissed.
You're dismissed.